You moved up on the
but I'm Joan. She was like, oh, I don't know what to do.
Wait a second.
Left it alone.
Yeah, it was pretty much.
I'll be right. Every hour.
This was a work. I just want to verify that you're on the same spot.
We were out and back yesterday, so.
Okay, everybody, let's quiet down. It's 10 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and start and welcome everybody to the August 28th board meeting of Chatham Area Transit. We have a new board member who I'm going to recognize just briefly is Derek Cody. Dietrich Cody. Everybody will tell you Dietrich, I'm horrible with names, so I mispronounce my own name all the time too. I want to do roll call real quick, and then we're going to let Ron, who's the city manager from Garden City, give a quick introduction to you and introduce you to us, and then we'd like you to anything you'd like to say about joining the CAT board after we do roll call. So Beverly.
All right, good morning, everyone. Chairman French.
Here.
Mr. Amester.
Hello.
Mr. Ellis.
Here.
Dr. O'Halloran.
Here.
Mr. Durant.
Here.
Ms. Odell. Mr. Jones.
Present.
Mr. Lukakis.
Yeah.
Mr. Cody.
Present.
Thank you.
So Mr. Bell, can you
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Ron Feltner, City Manager from Garden City, Georgia. Welcoming Dietrich Cody, our newest CAT board member. City's excited at the opportunity for Mr. Cody to come on board and be a part of this body. As you all know, Garden City's been a CAT community for many years. We're very proud of that fact, and we're actually quite enthusiastic about how more service can come to Garden City in the future. And one thing we've talked to Mr. Cody about already is representing our interests here, so that as those discussions continue going forward, that we can certainly have input, because we do want to provide more services to folks in our community, the businesses in our community. We're all in on CAT. So thank you for the opportunity, and I know Mr. Cody is going to serve Garden City and this board well, and I'm going to come to more meetings.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
So Mr. Cody.
All right. I thank everybody for having me here. I'm very enthusiastic about getting to know each and every one of you. And like we said just now, we in Garden City trying to work hand in hand to bring CAT together, and we're going to make this thing happen. Garden City seems to have a lot of plans, and we're 100% with it. I thank you all.
Okay, we're looking forward to having you with us, and we're really looking forward to having solid representation from Garden City, because I think there's a lot we can do for each other. So you come at a good time, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
So with that in mind, let's move on to the minutes from last month. So we have two sets of minutes to approve. We have the regular meeting and we have the special meeting, so we're going to do them one at a time. So we need a motion to open up discussion on the approval of the regular minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Are we ready to vote? Light Director.
Move to approve.
Can we vote?
Okay, we have a motion with a second.
Are we on the board or what
We're going to go on the board.
I thought you were wrong. I know if you kept the same. I'm looking for a motion. Okay.
We got the motion. We're ready to.
It's the same thing. Won't let me come up.
It's not on the board.
Appreciate it.
I think Clinton was the second. Were you the second?
I was the mover.
Okay, Jay moved.
Second. No, it's no problem.
Won't let you vote either, will it, Mike?
No. It's not that anybody will open it up.
Other side. That's fine. It's weird. Mike told me that she can move
Let
it.
it go.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, it's the left side, I'm sorry. The left is rolling backwards.
I'm good.
Okay, I think we're ready.
So he changed the mover? I know.
Commissioner Jones, I don't have you logged in.
You got a long
You
one?
logged in?
Chase, you gonna have to wear your track shoes,
One,
brother.
two,
You
three,
gonna
four,
have
five.
to wear your track shoes.
We need to probably cut a hole in the middle of the table so it's easy to use.
Just stay in the middle of it.
Go back and forth.
Correct the move?
Every time we dance.
A little short.
The more times we hit it, the higher the charge gets.
Okay, Beverly, I'm not seeing the correct mover yet.
I moved.
Could it be that the wrong date's up there?
I moved to.
That could be two.
You moved to open the hearing, I moved to accept the minutes.
Okay.
And I second all of it.
Okay.
Let's go.
Just a blanket forever forward.
Just a
Yeah,
second.
Yeah,
Oh, tack
I
out.
always put Chester down for second.
Just rule second.
Okay, then, all in favor, vote yes. All opposed, no. And anybody abstain?
They need to revote.
Okay, that's why I was saying.
It just makes assumptions about.
It's not showing up.
It just wouldn't look good to be the mover and you vote against it.
Alright, it's showing up. I still like the little lights better.
And that was because that was the first of the.
Okay, so we got past this. Hopefully.
Well, we're off and running then.
We're off and running, so it should get easier from here on in. Okay, so motion carries. So the next item is the Board of Directors special meeting minutes. Can we have a motion?
So we'll.
Second.
Is that for a hearing or for the?
That was
Open the hearing and we'll open a discussion. Do we have any discussion?
Move to approve.
Second to approve.
Are you ready? Okay, all in favor, vote yes. Opposed, no. Abstain.
So they still got you as the mover.
Well, I moved to accept the minutes, you moved to open the hearing.
It'll work out.
It'll work out.
I don't think you get, you don't
I'm
get,
lost,
you
man.
don't get paid extra for moving.
Yeah.
That's why I said I don't care.
Everybody's something in. Quarter removed.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
back.
motion carries. So the next is the board election of a vice chairman. We had 2 nominations last month. We had some confusion on the voting, so we're going to do this over again. So Beverly, do we vote for this?
Yes, sir, we can.
I'm not seeing it.
Well, we don't have 2 separate votes, but
I think you need to go through the nomination process again.
I think you do.
Okay.
Too. I agree.
Okay, then we need to go through the nomination
I will
again.
renominate Michael.
Now renominate Chessman.
Okay, so we have renominated Dr. O'Hallahan and Commissioner Ellis. So all those in favor of Dr. O'Hallahan, who was nominated first,
Well, we have to stress he was nominated for.
just,
Go ahead.
so
So
we vote on this now?
not individually.
Okay, then I guess we're gonna have to raise our hands again.
It's
All
all
in
hands
favor?
in the hand.
Yeah, because you can't do two.
All
All in favor of Dr. O'Hallahan, raise their hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those in favor of Commissioner Ellis, raise their hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. So motion, not the motion, but Dr. O'Hallahan is now elected vice chair. Okay, moving on. Next up are 3, I think, are going to be fairly interesting presentations. The first one I'm really looking forward to, those of us that have been on the board for a while, it's been a long time coming. and that's the Transit System Redesign by Jared Walker and Associates. So this is going to be an interesting discussion. I'm going to ask everybody, let's hold our questions till the end, because she may answer what we're going to ask as the discussion goes on. And I think this is one of the most important things that Cat is going to do for a long time coming. So we'll take our time on this and don't feel rushed.
Thank you very much.
Is the presentation in the system?
You got it written down.
Tape, it's on tape.
Oh, appreciate it.
All right, my name is Michelle Poirot, and I'm a principal with the firm called Jarrett Walker and Associates. Jarrett Walker is my boss. We are a small firm. We're just 11 people. Most of us in Oregon, but we do have a small office in the DC area as well. And I am here to do some kickoff meetings with you, with CAT staff, and with the rest of our team here to get started on the system redesign project. My colleague Gavin is also here with me, and a couple other people will be working with us back at home remotely. And then Denise Grabowski of Curiosity is on our team as well. She'll be helping us with community outreach and communications. So I have a short presentation to give you a little bit of an overview. I'm very excited about your questions, so once I'm done with that, I am happy to answer detailed questions, high-level questions, whatever it is that you're thinking about as you process the information I'm going to give you.
Welcome.
Point it toward the negative power that it goes off at the same time.
All right. There we go. Okay, so a little more about our team. As I said, Jared is my boss. That's him. And then I'm the project manager, so that means I'll be like holding everything together and communicating a lot with CAT staff, but I'm also a transit planner, so I'll do some of the technical work, figuring out how to design the transit network. I do have a backup project manager, Scudder Wag in the Washington, D.C. area, so if I become ill or something like that, he's ready to step in and help. Our lead analyst is Evan Landman, also Gavin Pritchard, whom I already mentioned. We have a couple other transit analysts in our office who will be helping with this project. We have Kinetics on board to help us with scheduling. That's at the very end of the project. They'll do new schedules. And as I mentioned already, Denise, who's very first doing community outreach. So that's our consulting team. And here's our work plan. Here's the sequence of big steps that we plan to take. We're going to have a kickoff meeting, which we're doing right now. This is the kickoff of the kickoff meeting. The next thing we're going to do is an existing conditions analysis, and we're going to produce what's called a choices report. This is kind of like when you go to the doctor for your annual checkup, and you go in and you have a bunch of questions you want to ask and problems you want to talk to your doctor about. But before you start, your doctor wants your height, your weight, your blood pressure, your temperature, your pulse. And that's what our choices report will be. It'll be sort of height, weight, blood pressure, temperature, pulse. We want to take the time to really understand what's happening in your transit system, knowing that there are some burning questions and concerns that you have and that your community has. And we're going to do a lot of technical work to make sure we understand everything that's going on before we start recommending anything or asking any questions. That report we call a choices report because it isn't just reporting information. It's also pointing out to the community certain choices that will have to be made about the future. So someone reading the report understands not just why the system is what it is, but also how the system could be different in the future and what it would require to make it that way. What choices are required of the community and ultimately of the board if things are to change. So that's why we call it a choices report. And it's my hope that you all will read the choices report, or at least read the introduction, because I think it will be a very good grounding in the types of questions that we ask your constituents as we go through this process. After the choices report is published, we'll have a round of community engagement, our first round of community engagement. And we'll ask people about these choices. What do they think about these trade-offs that CAT is facing? What are their priorities for the future? Once we're done with that first round of community engagement, then we're going to design something called network concepts. We may decide to call these network alternatives or future alternatives. We can pick a good name for them, but basically, we're going to actually design two networks, two redesigned CAT networks for the future that are very different from one another, that illustrate a major trade-off that CAT could make. And we're going to show those to the public. That's the next round of community engagement, is showing people, hey, you said you wanted more frequency and longer weekend spans. Here's a network that would have more frequency and longer weekend spans. But in order to provide that, we've had to give up a bunch of other things. And you said you wanted more routes covering more places. Here's a network that would provide more routes covering more places. But look what we have to give up in order to provide that. So we illustrate that trade-off using these two network concepts. And these are detailed network maps. People can really see on these maps, what would that mean for my neighborhood, for my workplace, for my school? So that's our second round of community engagement. Oh, and I should mention, we actually design those network concepts with your staff, so we don't go do that by ourselves in our office. We come back here, we sit down with your staff, and we design those networks together. Then we get community engagement on the network concepts, and that's really valuable input, because that's people telling CAT not just what they want, but also what they're willing to give up to get it. And that's actionable input. Then finally, we do a draft network plan, which uses the input from the concepts, makes those trade-offs, and presents a network for the future that CAT could actually implement with available funding. We take that out again for community engagement. People give us more detailed comments. Ooh, I don't like that bus route, doesn't get close enough to the senior center. I want this bus route to go down that street instead, things like that. And then we will give you a final network plan and schedules for those routes. So this is the work plan, and the timeline generally, it's about 18 months long starting from today. But the public experience of the timeline is really that it's a year. Because the first time we go to the public is in January of 2019 with those general questions about choices. We go to them again in May and September of 2019. And then our timeline calls for board adoption likely in December of 2019. So the public experience is with this year, from when they're first asked something to when they see the board adopt a plan. But our technical work obviously starts today and could go as long as 2020 when we're writing schedules for routes after you adopt the plan. Now, this timeline is subject to change, but really that's up to you. The things that might change this timeline would come from the board. If the board sees a need for more public involvement or a need for another set of alternatives or whatever, we are not determined to do this as quickly as possible. We're determined to do it right, and the definition of doing it right is really up to you. So right now, we've planned to do 3 rounds of community engagement to make sure that we're consulting everybody each step of the way, building trust with the community so that they understand not just what's in the plan, but why the plan is what it is. What trade-offs had to be made to get to that plan. We're going to work with CAT staff in a couple ways. The choices report I already described. There's going to be lots of information in the choices report, but also lots of graphics. So, maps that help people see frequency and span in your network. Maps that help people see where there's high ridership in your network, and where things like the street network and walkability make it challenging for people to access transit, or challenging for CAT to get high ridership. So there are going to be a lot of images in the choices report. And the choices report is something we're going to pass back and forth with your staff to make sure that we've got the facts right. We want to start with shared facts, so everyone has the same understanding of the math and the facts, and then from there people can express their values and their priorities. We'll also be doing a core design retreat with your staff, which is where we get together around a big table and we design those network concepts for the future. This is us in Houston and this is us in Richmond. And generally at the core design retreat, there's an opportunity at the end of the day around 4 p.m. for other people to come in who didn't want to spend the whole day, who can't spend the whole day, and see what we've been doing and get a sneak peek at those network concepts. And that's typically something that we invite board members to. That won't be until next spring, but that would be something we'd be eager to have you come to just at the end of the day and see, what is in these network concepts that we're going to be showing to the public. We want you to be aware of what's going out long before it actually goes out, so you can prepare yourself and your constituents. Working with the board and the public, as I already mentioned, at the end of each day of the core design retreat, we do like to invite board members to drop in and see what we've been working on. But a really important principle for the way that we work with the public is that we are always careful to elicit actionable input. We know that the experience of running a transit agency, and also, I'm sure, the experience of running a parks department or a school district or any other public agency with limited budget and a lot of need, is that people come at you constantly and tell you what they need. But within your limited budget, they don't help you prioritize and decide what to prioritize with your limited funding. So someone tells you they need later night service on a route, and you believe them, right? They desperately need it, and you can see that, but how can you provide it without cutting something else within your fixed budget? And so we are always careful to get input from people that doesn't just identify what they want and what they need, but also identifies what they're willing to give up to get it. Because that will help you take action within a fixed budget and within a fiscally constrained, responsible budget. So here's an example. Imagine in a little neighborhood with a grid of streets, you have 2 routes that are going to a downtown, and they each come every half hour, pretty good frequency. And you have Mrs. Smith, who's living here, and she's a 2-minute walk to this route to downtown. So she just has to walk for 2 minutes, and then because the bus is coming every half hour, the worst wait she might experience is 30 minutes, and on average she experiences a wait of 15 minutes, half of that frequency. So she thinks this is okay. You could put these 2 routes on top of each other, focus your service onto a single street, and you would make her walk longer, 6 minutes now instead of 2 minutes. But you would make her wait a lot shorter, because now there's a bus coming by every 15 minutes instead of every 30 minutes. And her average wait is just 7.5. And this actually gives her a faster trip into town, because she spends so much less time waiting that it's faster, even though her walk is longer. There is no objectively better design. I'm not going to tell you either of these is better than the other, because it's really a matter of values. If you value short walks more than short waits, then you will prefer this network. You will prefer this design. If you value short waits and faster trips more than short walks, then you prefer this one. And every individual will have a different response to this depending on their circumstances, where they are in life, their physical ability, whether they're in a hurry, to get to work or retired. So individuals have different responses to this, and agencies value these things differently. But we will always ask a question like this, so that the plan we produce doesn't just tell you you should offer higher frequencies and shorter waits. It actually tells you your community has said they're willing to tolerate longer walks if it means you can give them a shorter wait. Or maybe the plan will say your community has said they're willing to tolerate lower frequencies and longer waits because it's so important to them to have shorter walks. So this is the type of question we'll ask, because it's really important to us that we give you a plan that you can implement with realistic resources, realistic constraints. And that's where our focus on trade-offs makes the input actionable. We also will bring hands-on learning to our work with your stakeholders. So we will have 3 stakeholder meetings next year. And the first one is particularly important. It's really important we get all of the key players at the very first meeting, because we will do hands-on training with them to make sure that they start to understand a lot of what we already understand and what you understand about how a transit network works, why it's constrained, why you can't do everything for everyone. And whenever we do these workshops with people, people come in with their cause that they're really eager to advocate for, and sometimes they come in frustrated, like they've been saying the same thing for years, and the transit agency is not taking action, why not? And we have them do a couple trainings and play a couple games, and almost everybody says, wow, this is so much harder than I knew. Now I understand what the agency would have to do in order to say yes to me. So it gives them some more respect and appreciation for how hard the job is, but it also makes them more effective advocates for whatever they care about. And we are in favor of advocates being more effective at representing their own values. So this is a training that's good for you and good for them. Really improves the partnership. So we will be in touch with you, Denise in particular will be in touch with you about recruiting to the stakeholder committee and making sure we have the right people on the stakeholder committee. And it's especially that first meeting where we do this training that it's so important to have the right people in the room. As I've already mentioned a couple of times, we focus on choices of values. We may have technical advice for you, but we'll give that to you, in writing and behind the scenes. When we talk to stakeholders, when we talk to the public, we focus on the choices of values, things that reasonable people can disagree about. Those are the hard choices to make. So here's an example. How should a transit agency allocate its resources across an urban area? When we're talking about fixed routes. So here's a neighborhood in a fictional urban area, and all these little dots on the map are residents and jobs. And as you can see, there are these two main roads through the neighborhood, and that's where most of the residents and jobs are located. But then we have some smaller side roads, and we have more sparsely distributed residents and jobs. We only have 18 buses for this quadrant of our town. So where should we put them? If we want to pursue a ridership goal, if that's what the community wants from us, or if that's what our board tells us, maximize ridership, then we will think like a business. And when you think like a business, you choose which markets to enter. You choose the markets where you can be competitive, where your product will be popular. So the two markets we choose are these straight roads. They offer the largest number of people a direct transit trip. And because we focus on just two roads, we can offer frequent service with long hours of service 7 days a week. We put all 18 buses on those two roads. There's a bus coming every 10 or 15 minutes. So because we're in the place with the most people and we're focusing our service to make it very attractive, lots of people choose to ride it. And so we get high productivity, which is high ridership relative to cost. And that's how we brag about the success of this network. This is our high ridership network. But of course, you can imagine there are people who are living in less dense places, farther from the main roads, who may have a severe need for transit, or who may be entitled to transit, maybe because they pay taxes, and may say, what, this is crazy. You can't have a transit network that doesn't get anywhere close to this part of the neighborhood. So there's another goal that we can serve with transit, an equally important and valuable goal, which is coverage. If we're pursuing a coverage goal, if we're maximizing coverage, then we try to serve everyone, even in expensive to serve places. And so in this neighborhood, what we would do is we would take our 18 buses and we would divide them into 11 different routes so that every single street has some service on it. Everyone has a bus stop within a short walk. So we have routes that cover everyone, but because we've divided into many, many routes, the frequencies are not very good. Right? Buses coming every hour, maybe less. The spans of service are shorter. Maybe there's no weekend service, or service might end at 6 or 7 p.m. And also the network's more complicated. It's just hard to understand what's happening because there's so many lines on the map. And so what we get is lower ridership. Because even in the places where we have the most people, the bus is only coming once an hour. And the bus is not coming once an hour. So those people don't ride it. Many of those people don't ride it. But the way that we brag about this network is we describe access, coverage. You can say 100% of our population has access to some service, and that is extremely valuable. Both of these goals are really important. They're important to me and my own community. They're probably important to a lot of you. But the important thing to know about them is that they lead us in opposite directions. The more you pursue a ridership goal, the more you think like a business and focus where ridership is highest, the more you support dense and walkable development, maximum job access, and maximum BMT vehicle miles traveled reduction, maximum congestion reduction. The more you do of this, the less you can do of this. A coverage goal, you're thinking more like a public service. You provide lifeline access for everyone. You support low density development so that nobody is stranded, even if they live in a lower density area. And so this is also a way to provide equal service to every neighborhood or every district or every city. But they trade off against each other. Now you can do a mix of these two things. It's not that you have to pick one or the other. But the more you do of one, the more you focus on attracting ridership, the less you are spreading out to cover everyone. And the more you spread out, the less you are focusing. This is the hardest trade-off in transit. And the reason I'm talking to you about it now is I can already tell from looking at your network and your community and your city, this is something I think you're going to have to wrestle with. It's something you're already wrestling with, but we want to help you wrestle with it more explicitly. We want to help your stakeholders wrestle with it as well and understand it so that they can understand where you're coming from when you decide to focus on a more frequent route, or when you decide to spread your service out even though it means lower frequencies. This is a really important thing to understand and to build trust between the community and CAP. So, you don't have to choose one or another, but you are always choosing a point on the spectrum between them. This is an extreme illustration of a ridership-oriented network and an extreme illustration of a coverage-oriented network, and you're somewhere in between right now. One way to describe the balance for an agency is to say, what % of our operating budget should we spend in pursuit of ridership? And what % should we spend providing service where there isn't much ridership, but there's another important goal to meet by being there? That's one way you can do this. You can actually define how much of your budget you want to spend towards different purposes. Our mission is not to deliver transit plans. It is to foster clear conversations about transit leading to confident decisions. And the confident decision is yours, ultimately. So that's why we're here. We want you to be able to make a confident decision at the end of this process. So as we go through it, and every time we come to you with a question or with information, and even when we're not going to, I really want to hear from you what you are going to need to make a confident decision. And if you see a report come out and it's missing some piece of information that you need, please let us know. Because it's really your decision that is our final and most important product, and your ability to move forward with the plan after we're gone. Thank you.
Can you get the discussion clock up? Give us a second, we're getting our
Discussion clock.
shot clock, as we call it.
Struggling with that.
Yeah. Got it.
Close to that.
Are you gonna hit speak?
Okay.
Clock's running and you're not
Okay,
ready.
Chester, you're up.
Clock's running and you're not ready.
I'll give you 10 minutes, 10 seconds added.
10 minutes.
10 seconds.
Yeah,
Get that
question.
10 minutes.
At this point, how much information do you have as to what they're doing on a state level with transit?
Not very much.
No,
But I trust within a week or two we'll have much more. We're just starting. Is there anything in particular we should know?
Well, I'm worried about where the state is going as far as transit is concerned. They did a thing this past legislative session, and they dumped all the money into the Atlanta metro area. All right, now coming out of going into the next section, what they're talking about now is making it more like going out to a regional area. See, and if we're not a part of the region, it'll be a while before they get to us. So I'm just wondering how much information do you all have to go forward with your plan? And you say you have little. All right, so now this is more of a question for staff. I guess more than you, but that it's going to concern you. How much do you know about what Garden City is planning, staff-wise and from your standpoint? You know, they want increased services and more ridership. So therefore, what they have on the table that Garden City has to be a part of what we're doing here. So that doesn't mean that you have to meet with them quite soon.
I think the question will come up of which of the municipalities within the county should be included in designing this network. And so that will be obviously Savannah, right? We'll include the city of Savannah, of course. And then we'll have a chance to ask Garden City if they want to be involved and what that would mean, what they need to make some commitments, that kind of thing. So I think that's many months in the future, but I do look forward to having that conversation with them. And that is something that we'll look to staff to start working on early so that they can give us the information we need at the right time.
Because they have been stakeholders from a long time. So therefore, when you say City of Savannah, they should be in that same category.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be afterthoughts.
Sure.
So
No.
yeah.
Certainly in the same category. I heard something about more service in the future
Right.
and all in and all that, which is great. And maybe this plan is even a venue to have those conversations about what it would mean to have more service in front of the city.
I'm good.
Okay, next
Time on the
speaker.
board, Jeff?
Yeah, you can have it.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick things, Michelle. You said that the technical work starts today, ends in January 2020. How does that date relate to implementation? Is that the beginning of implementation? Does that mean you've actually got a plan that's starting that day? Or that would be the first day that the new routes were engaged?
January 2020 is when we would give you the schedules. So implementation is not our responsibility under this contract. But we are going to want to work with you on whatever timeline you have for implementation. So I think one question is, once we've adopted a plan, and we've given you all the detailed turn-by-turn maps and the schedules and all of that, how much time do you need then to get to implementation? That is a question we can help you with, but that is ultimately a question for CAT staff, because to implement, you'll need to do things like you'll need new driver blocks, you'll need to probably move bus stops, you'll need to do a lot of public communication, and that happens after we're finished with our part of the work. And we can also help you by connecting you with other agencies we've worked with who have implemented our plans, who can say, oh, well, here are all the things we had to do, and here's how much time it took us. And certainly some of that could start a little earlier, but.
So January 2020 is basically you handing us the finished package.
That's right. And then you take it and you do the rest of the things that need to happen.
Okay.
One other thing I should mention is there will be decision points in this process about whether the finished package is a network plan that is budget neutral, assumes no new revenue, probably even assumes normal cost inflation for some future year, or whether it assumes new revenue that you don't yet have. And it is much more inspiring to do a network plan with more revenue, but it is also less realistic because we don't know the future, right? And it makes some presumptions. And so that's a decision that will be made at some point. That may be a decision that comes before you. And that also affects when you can implement. Certainly something that's budget neutral that you can do within your existing budget is much faster to implement, but also harder because any change is hard, and certainly when there's no new money, moving a bus route from here to there is a lot harder than just adding a new bus route.
So in your illicit actionable input chart, where you're showing the 2-minute walk versus the 6-minute walk, and the time versus the walk time versus wait time. This presumes those wide gaps to be the 30 or 15 minutes. and this is probably not realistic, but if you had a predictable system
Mm-hmm.
with an app that said, okay, this bus is gonna be at that stop
Mhm.
in 2 minutes,
Mhm.
then you could leave 3 minutes before that. So
Right.
you could effectively change these times substantially. Is that realistic?
Yeah.
Does that impact what you're talking about here? How does that impact?
That's a great question. I'm really glad you asked that. So, yes, we're saying very simply that if a bus comes every 30 minutes, the average experience someone has is of waiting for 15 minutes, half the headway. Because sometimes they're unlucky and they wait 29 minutes, and sometimes they're lucky and they wait 1. And you're pointing out that actually, when you have good real-time information, or very reliable service on the schedule, you don't have to wait 15 minutes at the bus stop. You go to the bus stop a few minutes before the bus shows up, right? The thing is, you still wait at your destination. Especially if you are a person who lives your life on a schedule that someone else sets, like a wage-earning worker. If you have to be at work at 8 a.m. and the bus schedule gets you there at 8:05 or 9:05 or 7:05, well then guess what? You have to get there at 7:05. You have to be 55 minutes early. Otherwise you'll be 5 minutes late. And it is not physically possible for CAT to deliver every worker to their job 5 minutes before their job starts, right? Because jobs are everywhere. They start at all different times, and your buses go, no matter how great your schedules are, you can't possibly be matching every single grocery store and McDonald's, start schedules. So that means that people experience a wait, not necessarily at the bus stop, but they experience that wait as a mismatch between the transit schedule and their life. If I have a doctor's appointment at 10 a.m. and the bus gets me there at 10:05, well, I have to be early. And so I spend my waiting time not at the bus stop, I spend it sitting in the doctor's waiting room, spending 25 extra minutes in that waiting room that I wouldn't otherwise have to spend if my bus were more frequent. So the wait never goes away, but it does move. And certainly having real-time information that tells people when the bus is coming is really, really great. And it allows people to wait where they want to wait. Because I would rather actually wait in the doctor's waiting room than at the bus stop, but it doesn't eliminate the wait. So the more frequent your routes are, the less time people will spend being early to something, being someplace they don't want to be for a certain amount of time. That's what high frequency gets you.
That's a little different than that wait on the front end, which could be managed with real-time information.
And the quality of the wait on the front end is different if you know when the bus is coming. If you know with confidence the bus is going to be there in 10 minutes, that feels so much better than if you think the bus is supposed to be there in 10 minutes, but you're not sure. Or maybe you already missed it, so maybe it'll be 40. The real-time information changes the transit experience for the positive in many different ways.
Thank you.
Okay, Bill? On to Michael.
I have one quick question. Do you use any of the concepts from the AARP Livability Cities program?
Tell me more about that. What are
It's the 8 factors that determine what cities are the most livable within the United States, and transit is one of the main issues.
Oh, do you know what they measure about transit? Is it just a yes/no transit, or do they measure?
No, they
travel?
measure similar to what you're talking about here. They did a very brief program on this down here about a month or 2 ago, and they said if you want more information, to contact them, and I will if it's of any value.
Okay.
But it's not currently part of your organizational
I think
system.
we are probably measuring the same things they're measuring,
I think so,
and
yeah.
probably then some. We probably measure more. They may just be looking at how much transit is there, and we'll certainly look at how much transit is here, but also what percentage of your population is covered, meaning is walking distance to bus stop. We will also look at travel times, so not just is a bus stop nearby, but how far can someone actually get from their house in a reasonable amount of time. Things like that. So we probably go a little farther than they do.
Okay.
But I'd be happy to look at that if you want to send it to me. I haven't looked at that before.
Getting attacked again. Sorry.
Drip?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got to go back to Jay. Somehow he's disappeared off this. I'm telling you, we've got to get this thing straightened out. This is almost embarrassing. With all the problems we're having between voting and getting it signed in and losing speakers. So Jay, I'll keep track of you my watch.
I want the time. I'll wait for it.
Okay, well, go ahead.
I want my pause, I want my time, I want
All right.
all of it.
How do we get them back?
The time.
Is that me right now?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. Let's all go.
Can you pause for 15 seconds? Okay. I'm joking. Let's go. I want to get a better feel of what you say by define think like a business. Define that for me if you could.
Well, so what I meant about that ridership goal, if someone came to you and said, well, let's use a different one. If somebody is opening a McDonald's franchise, and they're thinking like business, right? Their goal is to maximize profit, which for them will mean keeping their costs low and getting as many people through the door as possible.
I understand that, but conceptually speaking, for Chatham area transit,
Yeah.
think like a business. That's more. I want more tied
Okay.
to what we.
So, a McDonald's franchise would look for a place where they can get a lot of customers through the door,
Correct.
and where their costs will be low because maybe their transportation costs are low and they can get workers. Similarly, Chatham area transit could look for a place where you get as many customers through the door as possible, through the doors of your buses, while keeping your costs low. And what drives your costs? Really, hours on the road, right? The limitation in your budget is you have drivers, you have buses, and you can only put them on the road for so many hours. So what keeps your costs low is driving shorter distances, faster, and then what gets your ridership high is getting as many people through the doors as you can in that amount of time, in that amount of distance. So a think like a business strategy for a transit agency would be put your service where you can drive the shortest distance and get the most people through the door, which means you're offering something that they find useful and compelling, and so they don't use their other options. They don't get a ride from a friend, they don't ride their bike, they don't take a taxi or an Uber, they don't get a car. Now, the thing that happens when you focus on those places is you can put more of your buses on those routes, or you can put your buses on those routes for longer hours of the day, for more of the week, which means you can offer higher frequency service, you can offer longer spans, and that makes your service competitive and compelling, and allows people to choose transit rather than choosing one of their other options. So that's what I mean by think like a business. It's not about profit. When I say think like a business, I don't mean make a profit. I mean maximize customers.
That's
relative
McDonald's
to your
game plan
costs.
is to make a profit. No, most places ain't allowed.
Oh, I know. So that's where that analogy doesn't quite
I
work.
got you.
Yeah.
All right, my next question is community engagement. As far as community engagement, the first timeline you have is January 29th, which is 4 months out. What are we going to do to make sure we have the right kind of community engagement out there? Because I don't want where stagnated community engagement, and in previous years when we did that, we had low participation rates. So what are we going to do to make sure that we have high rates of participation as far as community engagement, so we're making sure we're serving the public that we're trying to serve?
Okay. I should mention, part of the reason we would start in January 2019 is just to avoid the holidays.
I mean, I'm with that.
We could actually, our part of the work can be done much faster than that, but we hit Thanksgiving and Christmas and Christmas people. So might as well wait until everyone's back in school and fresh. We can ask people when they're in their usual routines. So in terms of community engagement, what we'll be doing is we will be doing onboard surveys on the buses, on paper.
Onboard service?
Onboard surveys on the buses and on paper. There will be times when we do it at the bus stop rather than on a bus, just because we may have more materials than we can easily shuffle on and off of buses. We will also do a web survey, which I'm hoping we can also promote on the buses, smartphone-friendly web survey for people who are on the internet. And then we are going to have some community events. And each time we go out to the public, we're planning to do 6 community events and go out to where people are. So rather than have an event and tell people to take time out of their day and come to it, find some place where people are already getting together for whatever reason and talk to them. And we have, as a goal of our community engagement, very explicitly that we will make sure and we hear from people who ride every bus route and are in every neighborhood that you serve. So that we're not hearing overwhelmingly from one part of town or one type of person.
We're going to try to be consistent as far as this is concerned, because, I mean, I think the consistent theme is in January is one thing, May comes next, but September, that's when you actually get your big focal group, because people will already understand you're being engaged. So are we gonna make sure we're consistent as far as this engagement is concerned?
Yes, we will be consistent, meaning I think we'll go back to some of the same places. We'll definitely work on reaching those same people. We want to reach the same people over and over again. We want to grow the people we reach, but it's useful to hear from the same people repeatedly because they've already taken some time to educate themselves and think through this once. So asking them then to build on their input is really good. In other words, everyone who takes a web survey in the first phase thinks about it a little bit and starts to get invested and develop their opinions. And so we want to hear from them in the second phase because they'll have a stronger and clearer opinion that time.
All right.
I think the biggest, most exciting part of the community engagement will be the second phase. I think it will be when we go out with those two network concepts because then people will really get to see such a contrast. And I think that most people will see something they like in one or the other. And that'll be the most energetic and important part of the community engagement, that second phase.
All right, the original map or game plan as far as Chatham Transit is concerned was developed way long time ago. We didn't have veterans, we didn't have Truman, and we didn't have the development on the south side, east side, west side, and including Fulton Garden City.
Okay.
So how much influence is that plan going to be into this construction?
Which plan are you referring to and how long?
What I'm saying is the original, I guess the original mapping strategy as far as bus routes concerned, that was designed a long time ago where we didn't have all these other access points and entry points. With all those new access points and entry points, how will you capture audiences that have not been attracted in the past?
Do you mean capture people and get them to ride the bus, or do you mean capture people and get their input about this plan?
Capture people and get ridership on the bus and get their input.
Okay. So, our instructions so far have been to let ourselves have a blank slate rethinking of this network, which means that we're not beholden to the existing network. We don't have to propose something just because it's always been done that way. And that also means not having to limit ourselves to the places where service is concentrated today just because it's always been done that way. Now, familiarity is valuable to some people, so we may ask the public, how valuable is it to you to have a familiar network that's, historical, that you know, compared to something new that isn't like what it's always been, but might serve today's needs better? We can ask the public that question, but our instructions have been that this can be a blank slate redesign, which means we can look at where the travel demand is today, where the needs are today, where the ridership potential is today. And if that's different from where it was 50 years ago when the network was last laid out, that's okay. We don't have to be beholden to that old version.
I'm going to use my last minute and 32 seconds without looking at the clock to talk about the fact of I want to make sure it's clear from my perspective that we are making sure we're looking out for the ridership of the people and not just for the business sector. I want to make sure it's stressed clear to the board that that's my full intent to make sure that we make sure that is at the forefront as far as our discussion is concerned. Because the ridership of people has been a failure, and I am with the frequency because the frequency I think would help eliminate a lot of issues because I get phone calls in reference to people not being able to get to work because they can't trust the system. Whether it be paratransit, whether it be fixed route, whatever it is, I have that issue. So my issue is clear to make sure that we're meeting the demand of the people just as much as we meet the demand of the business. And both of them coexist with each other. But we make sure we have a plan of action. And I also want to extend hours of service. Because I think hours of service is the thing we're missing out because people work downtown. But we shed our services down in a certain time frame. So I do want that, make sure that's important. I do want it where, and I'm being partial what I'm saying on my last 32 seconds, is that the south side is my home. The south side is where I live. But we have 3 buses in the morning, 3 buses in the afternoon, and we've never went back and re-explored to see if we needed more bus time in between those times. So I want to make sure that those things are put in the study as well. And I'll make sure we capture all points of reference, not just some. And the business, I don't want to, and I'm going to keep an eye on it, because I don't want the business interest at hand to be the main focal point. It needs to be transit for everybody. And I'm done.
If I can ask you a question.
Sure.
What are some differences between the types of things that business interests want to see in the network and the types of things that existing riders or the general public want to see in the network? What are those differences?
General public wants to get to work. They want to be able to sustain life. They also want to get home. They don't want to walk 3 miles from one facility just to get to the first bus stop because the people in the political arena won't want to extend the route. And that's not on you, that's on us. But my thing is, you're the one who provides us the information so we can make sure that that 3-mile walk isn't a 3-mile walk. Because we force the interest of the public. And the public forces the interest of politicians. And I'm speaking as a politician. So my thing is, the business interests I don't have a disagreement with. I just want to make sure that those people who live on Waters Ave, or those people who live on 38th Street, or those people who live in Garden City, or wherever, can get on a transit system and say, hey, when I walk down the street at 10 o'clock, my bus stop is there at 10 o'clock because it says it's there at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
And then I don't have to wait another hour before the next bus comes, because then I'm late, I'll lose my job. And so making sure the heart of the people is taken care of, that's why I want to make sure that we are transparent and getting out there in the community to make sure we get as many people's voices to the table as possible.
And I should add that, bus drivers are a really important part of the outreach effort here. Bus drivers are the base of your system, right? They're communicating with your riders every day, every trip. And so, we're also going to be talking with them and asking them to help get the word out about public input so that we hear from all the existing riders as well as everybody else who's interested.
Okay. I appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker.
Michelle, this is very exciting. I'm very excited to have you guys down here, and as we sort of look into changing the routes, as Jay mentioned, these routes have been set up, I think, when?
The
The
dinosaur
70s?
age.
They've been around for a long time, and we've
Longer
had...
than you.
Yeah,
Longer than you.
Longer than I've been around, by twice. And I've had my own concerns with sort of the routes. It always seemed to me like something like this was never going to happen. So the fact that we're here, that movements have been made by staff and the board to move forwards at a fairly expedited route into changing the routes that make more sense is fantastic. And I think we should really, I'm really looking forward to sharing that energy and excitement with the rest of the community. As we all know, the only thing that's going to make this work is a lot of community engagement, and this is a very great opportunity for us, I think, to take CAT and get it out there in a very positive and fresh way. I think the whole idea of the trainings with people, you mentioned games.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a brilliant idea, because it is. Once you sit down, you're sort of like, wow, this is way more complex than I had ever given it thought for. I think that's going to be really helpful. I'm not sure about the rest of the municipalities, but I know that the city of Savannah has probably too many neighborhood associations, but that would be a great way for getting community engagement. And then also I had a question for, I don't know who this question is for. When you say a blank slate, does that include the communities that currently, or the municipalities that aren't currently getting CAT service? Or we're just not including them in this?
But her your statement about blank slate was saying that what we have in design now on paper is what you don't have to go by.
Right.
You're going to design from zero.
So, question, it would
What
be...
Michelle may or may not know is that up until now we have not been countywide, and we're moving towards a countywide system. So I think the question that he's raised, and Jay also raised it, is there are municipalities who have never participated with us in transit. And I think the question is, are we going to include them in this plan? And from my perspective, I sure hope so.
Okay.
Because we want to go not only countywide, we want to go regional. So you may not have been up to date on this part of it yet. I don't know how deep you got in with the staff on where we are. So we may have you a little bit of a disadvantage with a couple of these questions.
We got a little bit of a briefing on the geography, political geography. Yeah, we will essentially come to staff in the winter and say, okay, it's time to get ready for the blank slate redesign. And here are a couple of assumptions we need to know. How big is the service area? Are all of the municipalities included? And how big is the operating budget? And we'll ask staff that question early, because we know that there may be some important conversations that need to be had with the municipalities to even give us an answer, right? If this municipality is in, meaning we're designing transit service to and from it, well, is the budget bigger? Or is that the existing budget spread across an additional municipality? We don't have an opinion about what you should do, but we understand that that's an important political conversation to have, collaboration to have with that municipality, make a decision about whether they're in, what that means financially, and so on. So we'll have questions like that, and we'll get answers from staff, but I recognize that the process of getting answers might require some work on CAT's part and through partners with the municipality.
Okay, we're gonna have to speed this up a little bit. I didn't want to rush you, but we do have a fairly high slate, so I'd like to go down through Bill, who's the last person signed in to speak, and then let's move on to the next step.
I'm good.
Next
I'm
time.
very excited. Thank you for being down here.
So, Mr. Cody, you're next.
Yes. My question was along the same lines as everybody else about expanding this bus route. I'm trying to find what's the timeline. How long does it take to incorporate? Like, we want to expand our route in Garden City. I talked to a lot of business owners, things of that nature. Everybody is pretty much concerned about expanding the bus route through there. Is this going to be incorporated in this plan?
It can be, but what will come up is anytime you lengthen a bus route, you either need to come up with more money, or to fund it, or you need to reduce its frequency. So say there's an hourly route that goes so far, you want it to go farther, you can make it go farther for free, but now it comes every 90 minutes. And so anytime we're talking about expanding a bus route, whether it's in Garden City or in Savannah or anywhere else, there will be a question of, okay, are we doing it for free, which means we need to make the frequency lower. Or maybe it stops running earlier in the evening, and that's how we pay for it. Or is there new money to make it the same frequency, but now it goes farther? That's the kind of question we'll be asking. So I do think that Garden City Service will be in this plan, but questions about expanding, longer distances, covering more places, we'll always have to wrestle with that question in the context of a fixed budget, whether it's your existing budget or a slightly higher budget, if you tell us to assume that.
But you would schedule something to meet with officials in Garden City to put that plan in?
Yes. And I think that what we might do is that core design retreat I described, which is where we and CAT staff work on designing those networks, I think it might make sense to invite representatives from the municipalities that want to participate to come to that retreat, or at least to come to the afternoon of that retreat and give them feedback. Yeah. I want to say, may I say one thing in closing?
You're not closed yet. We have two people waiting to ask you
okay.
questions.
All right.
I'm going to close it off after. I didn't want anybody else to sign up.
Can you give me, you mentioned, and Jay hit on it too, the difference in between acting like a business or operating as a business as compared to a public service. From your standpoint, is there one that should outweigh the other, or should we make sure there's a balance between the two?
I do not have an opinion about how you should balance those in this community. I have an opinion about how they should be balanced in the community where I live and where I ride the bus and pay taxes and all that. But my job here is as a technician to tell you technically what would happen if you change the balance, but I do not have an opinion about how you should balance them. And so that's what we'll be asking your community, and that's what we'll be asking you, is these are both valuable, but given that they trade off against each other, how should they be balanced? More of that one or more of this one? I should also clarify, when I say operate like a business, I already clarified that I don't mean turn a profit.
Right.
That's not. I also don't mean that, you can run a transit system that doesn't get high ridership, that prioritizes coverage all over the place, making sure everyone's close to a bus stop. The frequencies are not very high, so you don't get a lot of riders, but that can be okay if that's the purpose. The purpose is coverage. And you can still have really excellent business practices. So it's another meaning of business. You can still have excellent business practices, but provide a service where ridership is not the high priority. Lifeline access, insurance against isolation, coverage of all places can be the high priority. I just want to add that as an aside.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, Bill, you can wrap it up if you would.
Okay, well, I think we need to start with a dose of realism here, and the elephant in the room is system coverage. And you will come to staff with questions that they're not going to be able to answer this year. The coverage for Garden City is actually going to be a relatively, I won't say easy answer to get, but it's a gettable answer, because their city council can decide to extend the village rate to the part of the city that doesn't pay it now, and we put routes there. It's more money. How much more it is and how much service we can get for it is another question. But the rest of the municipalities is a big issue here. And so the question is, do we continue operating on millage, or do we wind up with some kind of transit spot that we can use to pay for the system? And essentially do a system, countywide coverage, and we're not gonna have the answers to that by the end of the year. So I think what I would hope to see from you, is some, not in depth necessarily, but some kind of alternative plan. So, if you're limited to the unincorporated county and the 2 municipalities, this is your plan. If you get these other tools to work with and go countywide, this is the plan. That's a lot of extra work, I suspect. We don't need to be beating around the bush about this. I mean, we've got a problem in what we can cover and what we can't, and that's a tax issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say that's one of the reasons we have Mike here, to give us a update on where the state may be going on taxes, and how we might look forward to increasing our revenue stream in the near future. Because that plays a role here, but also plays a role with our TAM plan. That we're going to need more funding to bring all of these vehicles up to 100% of their life supply. So Michelle, if you want to wrap us up, that would be fine. It's been a very great presentation. I know
Thank you.
This is more time than we usually spend, but this is a really important topic. And I think it was a good discussion. We had some really good questions came out from everybody.
Yeah, and your questions and your comments help me, they help build my understanding of what the challenging parts of this project will be and what we should be paying attention to. I just want to say, and I'm sorry that's not a very uplifting closing, that from my first glance at your network and this community, I do not see a lot of low-hanging fruit. This is not going to be one of those planning projects where you bring in the technical experts and they say, oh, you're doing that, stop, it'll get so much better. I don't see much waste in your system in terms of the design of the routes. I think that your system is stretched really quite thin, and your staff is providing as much coverage as they can with very little funding given the size of the area and the population that you need to cover. And so I think that this is going to produce some hard choices and it's going to be really clear to people and including to you that within your limited budget, your budget is really quite limited given the things that people are asking for. So I want to provide that caution because I know that you're really excited to have us here and we're excited to do this project, but I think that a lot of the project is not going to be about ideas and future plans that are exciting. It's going to be about clarifying, making those hard choices really clear, and ultimately that will build confidence and will build trust in the agency. And I hope that moves you along in the growth of your service, your countywide service, and whatever other goals you have. But I don't want to mislead you that I don't think I'm going to be back with exciting pictures that everyone is positive about, at least not in the first couple of steps here. Another way to say that is I think your agency's really doing a good job of stretching a limited budget pretty far.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Curtis, the next presentation is the off-duty officers. Maybe you could give us an intro into this because it's changed a little bit since the last time we heard it.
Sure, I don't want to take Eric's team.
Just
go ahead. Chief has worked on this presentation, but basically, as the board knows, we talked about meeting with the county, the sheriff's department, the city of Savannah, police to determine what is the best approach we can have for safety for our riders as well as our staff. We currently have unarmed security at the 2 locations, not on the vehicles themselves, and that security is not really sufficient to provide safe travel as well as a safe workplace. And so we did reach out, and the county and the sheriff's department were unable to help us due to manpower. So it pretty much rested with the city of Savannah, and so we met with them several times. And Eric is going to update us on where we're at.
Yes, sir. So that's what we deduced this to as an extra duty officer program in meeting with Savannah Police Department through their management services division, their special events coordinator. We've had one conversation with them in the last couple of weeks, so we're just kind of re-gearing up to start this program. And my name is Erica Franklin. I'm the Director of Safety Training and Environmental Services for the new folks. And I did prepare this brief overview. I'll try to be quick. So there's been conversations obviously already about this. CAT has a need for increased security and system safety enhancement, and this program will obviously pool the resources, as we mentioned, with CAT and the Savannah Police Department in order to provide strategic oriented services. We already have, a contracted security force, and they're doing what they're designed to do, but it's really just not enough. Transit agencies across the country have a multi-layer approach, and we want to do that here. Other agencies have been doing that for decades, and I was able to, we really started research on this about a year ago. I've done a lot of research. I've spoken to other transit agencies across the country. They're very warm and helpful and provided me a lot of information. They handed over everything from their data to presentations to talked about what worked for them and what didn't, and what might work for us and what wouldn't. And we're a smaller transit agency, obviously. So I'll start with here, and it's the overarching mission of we want to ensure that CAT patrons and employees can ride and work safely without fear 100% of the time. And this is not to incite fear in our patrons. Our system is very safe currently, but we need more of a deterrent, more of a presence. Okay, and this is common for all transit agencies. Today's security environment is one that's always evolving, and we always need to add new layers and new technology, and that's where we're going with this program. Speaking of the integrated multi-layered approach, this is what it looks like with my very colorful pyramid here. You'll see we have partners. CAT already has a lot of these elements. The partners are the Department of Homeland Security, you have TSA, you have FTA, you have all your training and classes you can provide and give to your employees, whether it be conflict and aggression mitigation, assault awareness and prevention, or just plain customer service training. All right, and then you have your police, which is what we obviously use now to a great degree. Police are already responding. We're already using those resources to respond to incidents. But the problem you see with that is many times when the police are called to an incident, by the time they get there, whatever's going on has diffused and the person has left the scene. So there's no real enforcement. They're gone, and that's kind of the end of the story. Extra duty officers, that's where we're headed with this layer. Employees and patrons are a multi-layer, and that really entails the whole if you see something, say something program, which is offered through the Department of Homeland Security. Technology, we're lacking here. I have a lot of exciting things I'd like to talk to y'all about in the future with technology for safety and security, so more about that later. And at the bottom, we have currently private security guards. All right, so this is some of the neat stuff I was able to get from the other transit agencies. LA Metro and Pierce Transit in Washington were very helpful, and they've done, like I said, years worth of research and surveys, and I thought that these were interesting statistics that I wanted to share with you all. LA Metro patrons said that 29% of pass riders left the system because they did not feel safe. 18% of pass riders indicated they would ride again if more security measures were implemented. That was from Pierce Transit in Washington. And 15% of current LA Metro riders want to see more security. And we haven't done a survey here, but I can guarantee if we did, we'd see something similar, maybe not to that degree, but everybody wants to see more security, more presence, and the places we lack here are on the bus. That's the part of the program I'm really excited about, is for officers to actually ride on our bus in a staggered manner. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the program and the structure too. So obviously we're recommending this because we're best positioned to manage these incidents when we have this type of program. It's a pretty simple program. And I kind of mentioned the improved response times for emergency calls, and we'll be able to also still leverage our current existing law enforcement infrastructure, and it provides a felt presence, whether that be for patrons or employees or anybody in the community as well. All right, so this is kind of a blurry map. I apologize, it looked better when it was smaller, but you kind of get the idea of where our populated service areas are. We know on the south side we've got the malls, you've got Walmart on Montgomery Crossroads, and then the 14 and 27 corridors, you have some really big stops like the hospitals, 37th and Waters, where you have high populated ridership. And what this will help with is if we have bus patrol and we have officers on the bus here, they're already there to provide that, that felt presence. You'll see a decrease in fare disputes, and anything really will kind of go through some of the issues. And then also, obviously, the calls for service, mostly at the ITC. We have limited at Cat Central, but it's also an administrative, mecca and customer service mecca. We have a lot of customers coming there for inquiries and applications and whatnot. So here's some offenses that are cause for removal. This isn't just specific to CAT. This is for all transit agencies, and it's going to be really good to communicate with local law enforcement, because there are certain things that occur on a transit bus that are against federal law. And even your local law enforcement does not know that spitting on a bus operator is a federal offense, and they're not treating it as such. Okay, so these are some of the things that plague all transit agencies, but mostly for CAT we have, refusal to pay fare, disorderly, intoxicating customers, mostly with other patrons, other customers on the buses getting arguments with each other over whatever silly little thing it may be sometimes. Resistance to the enforcement of policy, listening to music too loud. I would like to, I know we're short on time, but I want to give you some more specific examples, if I can not be too disgusting, because some of them are pretty real and awful that our patrons and employees have to face every day. And it goes all the way to, our facilities crew, our amenities crew. What's a nice way to say this? Biohazardous waste at bus stops and benches. They have to clean that probably almost on a daily basis. In the restrooms, our bus operators have to, and other customers have to go in restrooms where there's biohazardous waste. There are people bathing and washing their clothes in the sink in the birthday suit. I mean, I'm kind of making light of it. But these are things that are actually happening. These are stories I've been told face to face by our customers and our employees. So I just wanted you to know the specifics. See some of the things that are happening that this program will help improve. Okay, so this shows the new model. What we have now, Curtis kind of talked about that. We have private security only at Cat Central and the ITC. So as you can see, just looking at the list here, we have some gaps in coverage, and we have some areas for improvement, a lot of areas for improvement. I want to talk more about, obviously, the proposed model. So we'll keep the private security at Cat Central at nighttime, 7 days a week, essentially 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. to help with, there's not customers there, but there's employees there walking to the car, or just to keep the perimeter, guard the gate. That's currently what they're doing now. And they'll also stay on board at the ITC 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. And what that is for is basically for basic transit related things. These private off-duty officers or extra-duty officers will not be for general transit related things like, hey, you can't smoke here. That's what we will have private security to still enforce. Okay. Now the extra-duty officer model is they'll be at Cat Central from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. They'll be at the ITC as well, 6 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. 7 days a week. And this is the coolest part to me is, and I think everyone involved is the bus patrol, staggered 4 hours a day. So they will actually get on the bus routes and ride, and it will be staggered, so it won't be predictable, because if you make a predictable schedule, people start knowing which bus route to get on, or what we call the troublemakers will know which bus route to ride and how to avoid the officers on the bus. And then we'll have a chase car, staggered 4 hours a day. So the officer in the chase car can meet up with the bus patrol officer, or you can go to specific areas, just better response time, better coverage all around. All right, so what else will we get from this program? We'll get a summary of daily activity. So we'll have data, historical data and live data, where we can actually look at this program improving things. Response times to incidents, and hopefully lower, obviously that's the ultimate goal, is lower incidents on the buses. KPIs, and we can actually see these numbers go down. All right, and then the most important part is the associated costs. I kind of broke it down. It was a lot bigger on my screen, so I hope you can see this. Our total budget for this program is $520,000 annually. And I kind of broke down each service so you can see the approximate cost of those. and we left ourselves a little room. This is 520 is all in, and so what we can do over time is kind of taper it off as we see, you know, incidents decreasing, if we'd like to do that. And the next steps are obviously to initiate the extra duty officer mobilization, so that would mean a couple more meetings with Sergeant Purvis, and we hope to begin this program approximately September 22nd, and then we'd obviously have some learning curves, training staff, letting them know what's going on, internal procedures, and to develop response protocols for us and the program. So that is it. Any questions?
Erica, real quick, what's the most common crime we see on our buses?
The most common is a fare dispute. I did a sample of the last year while I was working on this presentation, and most of them were over fare disputes.
Where does assaults rank?
Assaults is very low.
So we're just, she's bringing up the shot clock. This obviously needs board approval. And we want to discuss this at the, we want to discuss this at the committee meetings next week. To make sure we're all comfortable with it before we actually vote on it next month. So this was done as a preliminary, give us some information.
So the next meeting is before September 22nd?
18th.
Okay, Chester, you're up.
Question, at present, as far as the technology is concerned, do we have cameras on all buses, all vehicles, whatever we own?
We have cameras on all of the fixed route buses. Yes, sir.
What about the paratransit?
There are some vans, accessible vans, we do not have cameras on, and a few, Steve, you might help me with that, a few of the Cubs and the new vehicles are all installed with Apollo camera systems.
All the new vehicles have Apollo camera systems. There's some of the 2017 Dodge Caravans that don't have cameras. A batch that was bought the previous 5 cutaways that don't have cameras.
And the reason for that?
Well, I'm sorry, sir.
The reason why we have some and not some?
Years ago, vehicles were ordered with no cameras.
So I mean, since years ago, we haven't made any motions or any movement to put them there?
We have not equipped all our entire fleet of cameras now.
It seems to me that that would be our first line of defense, because we have to cover not only employees, but we have to cover riders. Those folks who are on there, and those buses, and those vans, and those cars that we're operating, that we're carrying people, but we don't have those cameras on them. Are we talking about tremendous cost, or what are we talking about?
We're talking about $13,000 per vehicle to put in with Apollo cameras.
13,000 times how many vehicles?
8 right now.
Just 8?
8 that don't have cameras.
In the whole fleet, we don't have but 8 that don't have it.
About $100,000.
About 100,000.
So we don't have $100,000 to put on it?
We have a budget, and if that's something the board wants us to focus money on, we certainly can.
Listen, one of the things that come up in court cases, and Ty can speak to this, is did you do anything to prevent what happened? Am I right, Ty?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. So now, I don't know where you're going to cut from, because if I was looking at the budget, I could, because I can cut it in a hurry. But we are more vulnerable. The board and the agency is more vulnerable for us not having done anything, right? And we're talking about 8. We're talking about 100. Even if we're talking about $150,000, I think we should be moving to make sure that we cover our employees as well as our patrons with knowing. You can always pull it up on the camera. If somebody say, and like she said, spitting on folks is a federal law. And so if you got a dispute where a patron, these drunk folk get on the bus and spit on the driver or spit on another passenger. If you've got that so that the police can pull it up and take care of, we got them in the building. I'm looking at them. Two of them sitting right there together. Unless I'm looking at a reflection. I don't understand why we don't make moves to cover ourselves. We might as well. It's more beneficial to me to spend $200,000 than to give up $2 million.
When you say vulnerable, are you talking about vulnerability to criticism or vulnerability to liability?
To liability.
Well, we're cloaking sovereign immunity.
But what I'm does sovereign immunity cover the driver if the driver responds to somebody spitting on it?
Sovereign immunity covers cat. Cat is cloaked with sovereign
So you
immunity.
leave the driver out. That's my point.
No, well,
you say cover cat.
Well, it covers cat and cat employees, agents.
Well, I just think it's a worthwhile spend. I'm through.
That's public official immunity in case of driver.
Yeah, right.
I don't
But
disagree.
I think it's worth looking at those 8 vans, making sure we're gonna keep them for more than a month, and making us a proposal to update cameras. I think it's a good idea, Chester.
I will say that the vehicles we use on our highly populated routes, like 35, 40-foot buses, you got 6, 7 cameras on there, and we do have a really nice piece of technology for Indra. Not that I'm going to boost them up, but we do have a live feed, which is really neat for our control center. So if the bus operator calls an emergency, then you can open a live feed and see immediately what's going on inside the bus.
Okay.
I know it's my turn. I'll keep going. Real quick, I just had a couple questions. Will these officers be in officer clothing, so
Yes,
they'll
sir.
look like a uniform, so that he's a police officer?
Correct.
Great. What is our cost currently for the private contractors we've got?
It's around $215, I believe.
All
It's
right,
on that
I'll
line
look.
item.
So it's
I've
in
got
there?
it right here.
All of them?
Yeah, 216,000.
Do we currently have? When I was up in Atlanta, MARTA has kind of like a Respect Transit sort of a campaign that's very public. Do we have something like that? It's advertised to the buses.
What we're planning on doing is launching a full-blown campaign once we do this, so that like they was Ride with Respect, and when they launched their, that's exactly how they did it. So
I mean, as a board member, I would totally support adding in $100,000. We can figure out where that can where that can come from for the extra cameras and for possibly for this and a campaign. I think that all came forward all at once. That'd be done. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, then I think Jay.
No.
Bill. Yeah.
Well, and I'm going to be really quick. I agree with Chester about the cameras. The only question I would have is how old are those vehicles and how much life do they have left? I wouldn't want us to spend the money on something short term, but otherwise I think that's a good idea. I'm done.
They're not transferable from one bus to the other?
Well, it would be a cost of installation as well.
Okay.
Okay, Jay, I've got a shortage of 10 seconds, but we'll give it back to you in the back.
All right. Question. First thing is, we spoke of fair dispute versus assault, and I got kind of hazy right there. What are our top 5 issues that I guess are relatable to having a police presence or felt presence?
What are the top 5 issues?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can kind of refer to that list of what all agencies have issues with. It can spur from anything from playing your music too loud, fair dispute, giving up your seat for the
What I'm more candid to is what's happening in Chatham County.
Sure, I mean
So
they're the same. They're the same, Mr. Jones. Vile and profane language to the point of bus operator being in.
I want all my time.
A bus operator is, they are to let you know what the policies are. At some point, they have to stop enforcing when people get to a certain level.
All right.
They're passengers that get on the bus, disruptive, whether they're intoxicated or not, for no reason sometimes. Jay, really, I mean, sometimes you don't even know what the dispute began over. So one reason or another, but I'd say the top is definitely a fair dispute, not knowing, if somebody wants to have 3 kids for free, it stems from very small flashpoints. And these flashpoints would not even happen if you had, a uniformed officer that is known to bring on the bus.
I don't see the presence of an officer changing the fair dispute. I I gotta have a better understanding of how that they correlate.
Well, fair dispute would be people getting on the bus and just outright not wanting to pay the fare.
And I agree with that.
So
But
that's against the law.
I agree with that too. But we have that many fair disputes that, you know, that's a whole different problem that I think that's a CAT problem, not a officer problem. An enforcement piece is only enforcing the law, but if we're having fair disputes, someone coming on the bus and saying, hey, I'm not gonna pay my fare, somewhere down the line they got a free fare somewhere, or they got something that gives them the thought process to justify that they feel they can have a fair dispute.
Sure.
And so, you know, I mean, I gotta have, and it's not, I just gotta have, it's gotta be more to me. You spoke of the biohazard waste and the people bathing and all that stuff like that. How do we incorporate that into this whole police stuff?
Okay. So I'll give you another example, and it's not necessarily all on the bus related activities. It's property, facility, vicinity. So a few months ago we had an incident where I believe board members it was a committee meeting, and everybody was leaving to go to their car, and there were two young men one young man opened fire.
Yeah.
In the middle of the afternoon, 3 p.m. So, you know, we have a contracted security guard that sits inside the lobby to make sure things go well in there. But if you have a patrol car that frequent your facilities, I think that is a huge deterrent for things like that. And so that's where the lawful enforcement comes in, not just transit related stuff. If that makes sense, things like that.
For me to have a conversation with Chief Hadley or even the Sheriff Welcher, what is a reportable issue? What are reportable data that we actually have? Because I can't go to Chief Hadley and say, Chief Hadley, we want to do this because it's right. Because we have the authority to have that conversation with the manager and chief to do that. And they may not like it, but we have the authority to do that. But I can't go to him if I don't have empirical data or data stating what I'm actually requesting.
And we have had meetings with, a lot of you may not know, but there's a division of the police that's called Transit-Oriented Police Unit. And we've met with them, and we're working on some other programs to help just in general, like signage at our bus stops to not solicit, loiter, damage the bus stops, vandalize, whatever the case may be. And so we're starting there, and that's going to be helpful as well. But, you know, they've indicated to us that doing something like this and signage is really what everyone else is doing. It would help them a lot if we had a little more layers of enhancement.
And my last question before I go into a discussion piece. Summary of historical data. So we don't have any summary of any historical data previous to this point. So we're going to wait till September 22nd before we start getting data, or do we have data already available?
Oh no. So we currently keep daily activity reports, which are provided by our contracted security force, but unfortunately that doesn't provide us KPIs on what actually happens on the bus. Now we have all of that data, reports written, you know, historically kept for, I keep most everything for 5 years, definitely for 2. So we do have all that data. But this is going to provide us technology to organize it and put it into reports, and so we can look at this stuff on a daily, monthly basis in an organized way.
I mean, I understand the felt presence, all the justification, actions, stuff like that. But with me to make a decision, I have to have data. Okay. I have to have stuff that says these are the kind of crimes that's going on in this part of this city, so therefore we need, or county, so we can address the issues there. If you're not giving me that data, I don't get an understanding. So I can't vote for something like this unless I have the data to prove that a $500,000 investment is going to deter this. Because right now I see a $500,000 investment, but I don't see what am I getting back for that $500,000 investment. And I'm not saying it's not a good investment. I just need to know what am I spending that $500,000 on as far as the investment is concerned. Sure. And that is through data. Data tells me that $500,000 will help decrease spitting, if that's the only thing I remember when saying spitting, or fair disputes, whatever case it may be. Because my thing is, adding 2 officers on those time periods, 4-hour time periods, criminals morph. Criminals understand your system. They view it, they look at it, they say those are the 4 hours they're going to be on the bus. I'll just pick another 4 hours to be on the bus. Right. And if we don't morph and move around the scale like that, and we're not accommodating the whole system, then I got to see how that $500,000 is actually going to protect the assets. Chatham Area Transit.
Gotcha. And we will. I talked about the staggering a little bit. We'll provide them a change of schedule as often as weekly or monthly. So they won't ride the bus the same time every day. They won't ride the same route every day. You know, they might ride one day from 5 to 10, or they might swap and do a late night in a different route in a different area of town. We'll make sure that's staggered, but I'm sure there's no problem with us kind of providing you some historical data of what we're dealing with and percentages on you know, a real time day-to-day basis up till now.
Okay, since we're going to talk about this again at the committee meetings, let's go through Michael and we'll close it off after the people that are already signed up. So Chester?
What jurisdictional problems do we have?
There are some jurisdictional problems.
Yeah, because you're going to contract with the city of Savannah, but the city of Savannah has to pass off, even if they're on the bus.
Yes, sir.
And I'm just saying, something happens in unincorporated area or something happens in Garden City, they've got to pass it off. So which means that officer then has to call dispatch, who then has to call the so now how, if we're going to invest, why would we invest in limited jurisdiction?
Well, because the bulk of the issues are occurring within their jurisdiction. And I'm not going to say that they're not occurring outside, but from just a small sample, I don't see very many at all outside their jurisdiction. And yes, we will maybe have some issues here and there very infrequently. Well, they will just have to use our normal structure of, you know, our standard police unit where they'll have to call. But
So,
this is going to address, I would say, at least 95 to 98% of our issues are within this jurisdiction. You can kind of see on that map, I know it was blurry, that I kind of populated where most of the issues are occurring. So that would be within their jurisdiction.
So there is data available.
It's not, no, it's not, it's kind of like a
The data I'm asking
scattergram.
for is actually
It's not, yeah, I don't
plotted,
have that today. It's
plotted.
not plotted. This is kind of like a scattergram that showed our main focus of ridership.
But if you say that the majority of it is happening in the city limits of Savannah, that's got to be based on something.
Yes, like I said earlier, I did a small sample over the past year just from our service alerts, and I plotted them there.
So that's that.
Just like just like a block. It's not really like specific time of day or anything like that, which is what we want or hope to have, but that shows you jurisdictionally where the incidents are occurring.
Okay, then I think, Michael, you can wrap it up for us.
Yeah, just one question. The 520 includes the 216 we're already spending?
Yes, sir.
So we're actually only increasing by 300,000?
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay, just to make that clear.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Okay, then I think we'll move on to the agenda. The next and last presentation is Mike Packard. You could bring us up to date on what may happen in Atlanta
I will be glad to. Thank you.
this year.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to appear and kind of give you an update about what's going on legislatively concerning transit. And at the end of the day, it really is all about the money. Where is the money going to be? Who is the money going to come from?
And how do we get some?
Yes, well, very true. Okay, I'm not sure I know how to.
That really does that.
You just do it for me. How about that? Okay. Just to bring you up to date, last year, or actually earlier this year, the General Assembly did pass HB 930, which is the legislation that created the transit SPOS. It actually is not effective until January 1, 2019. A unanimous vote from the Chatham delegation. In fact, we have Bill Hitchens and Carl Gilliard on the House Transportation Committee and Ben Watson on the Senate Transportation Committee who helped move this thing through. What the legislation does, being focused on Metro Atlanta, was to create a 13-county VATL agency. And that has now been housed at SRTA, State Road and Tollways Authority, which now encompasses Greta as well. There was no money in the budget for the creation of this agency. After the session, the governor did put $2 million in CERTA's budget to help fund this and move forward. So they are up and running. I'm sorry, yes, $2 million for that. What they have done is they have created 10 cross-jurisdictional districts that are not moving from one county to another alone. It is cross-jurisdictional, and it parallels with travel routes so that they can get the flow of people moving from one jurisdiction to another in a single body. It has created some very interesting situations where you've got commissioners from one county on the side of the 13 county, and another one from the other side of the 13 counties that have never even spoken together. So they're trying to get those synergies going. No state funding source for this at this time, but HB 930 created the Transit SPLOST for local funding for the ATL, up to 30 years, up to 1 cent for transit operations, maintenance, and capital. And the two key words in there are operations and maintenance. SPLOST, T-SPLOST do allow money to be spent on transit, but it's only capital. All right, let's see if I can get this thing to work now. There we go. The two-county option was created, which basically says that if you're outside of the ATL, you can link with another county and run the transit SPLOST, but both counties have to pass. If one of the counties does not pass it, it's null. CERTA, we met with CERTA last week to find out where we are in terms of focus. The first session with the $1 million Deloitte study that they've been working on focused on Metro, the VATL. HB 930 was the result of that. They thought they had solved the other Metro. Other Metro is Savannah, Augusta, Columbus, Macon, Valdosta, Athens, and Albany. And CERTA manages the Deloitte contract in directing them on what they're supposed to be looking at. So our big question was, now that they're focused on rural, is where did the other Metro go? And they said, well, we're kind of working the other Metro in with the rural because of interconnectivity issues, but the two-county option is impossible to use. We have talked with all of our colleagues at the other systems, the other Metro systems around the state, and unanimously they agree that while they feel they could probably pass this in their urban county for their urban system, there really is no support in the rural counties that are connected to them. So there's recognition that HB 930 has to be amended, and we have staff support from CERTA to do this. So last week they held a House Transit Governance and Funding Commission meeting with focus on rural transit. Very interesting, very involved meeting. There are service delivery issues, there are coordination issues, there are governance concerns, and there's that other funding concern issue that is out there. Rural is a coordination nightmare because of the number of small jurisdictions that are involved and because of the driving agencies that are involved. GDOT, Department of Human Services, and Department of Community Health all have a role to play, and GDOT's is very, very small in terms of rural transit. In terms of any transit, it's very small. But they spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000 on rural transit out of about $151 million that is spent on rural transit, primarily by DHS and DCH. Well, Deloitte has come up with some rural goals, which are quite laudable. One is to design a new governance method for rural transit. And here's the funding issue as well. Create an innovative funding method. Encourage private sector investment, and they're investigating how that would work, and to achieve success through the legislative process. And the legislative process is going to be fairly large in this. Here are the challenges that the rurals face. There are 118 rural counties, 86 of them have transit service, 32 counties do not have transit service. 99% of this is on demand, basically paratransit services. There are inconsistent and conflicting state and federal regulations. The smaller the county, the more dispersed the population is. There's absolutely no transit network coordination. Most of the systems cannot cross county boundaries. So they're stuck with really moving people around in their own jurisdiction. You have two RDCs, Coastal RDC and one other RDC, that actually are providing regional services so that they can move across these county boundaries. But there are issues still connecting with the other metro systems. Regional governance is a concern, and they're trying to get their hands around what would be a proper role for the RDCs, and they're looking at shared and cooperative local funding based on service delivery. But again, there is no new state funding anticipated. So here's kind of the direction they're looking at. They're looking at regional development commissions to handle planning, oversight, and coordination of service delivery in the rural counties and the rural areas. Governance through the existing RDC structure with a carve-out to exempt any role with the other metro systems. But they might take a page from the ATL and look at not necessarily conforming to the RDC footprints around the state, but look at turning that on its ear and figure out what the travel routes and the travel corridors are. They're talking about a possible funding method that would look to the local governments and would be apportioned based on service delivery, i.e. the number of rides that are generated in a county would be the responsibility of that county to pay. Again, no new funding. On our issue, the other metro single county option is on the agenda for the next meeting. Curtis and I, Butch McDuffie from Athens Clark, Valdosta as well, are all on board with this. The chairman has realized that there's got to be a solution, and he is open to options. They also realize that there is regional interconnectivity with all of the paratransit services that are coming into the central cities and particularly the medical communities within those areas. So the issues that have to be resolved are, how do you be consistent with the requirement that the ATL has on regionalism? And you might say, well, what does the ATL have to do with transit outside of the metro area? The way the legislation is written, the ATL staff, as far as we can figure out right now, does have some level of sign-off on if you're going to be able to proceed with a transit SPLOS based on looking at what the projects are that would be funded. How is connectivity going to be achieved in a consistent manner? And that's connectivity, again, between the other metros and the rurals. And what are the linkages? How do you do that? Is it services coming into the community? Does that trigger? Or are your services going out of the community, and buried within that is a catch-22? CAT is authorized to provide services outside of this county, should we decide to do so. Most of the other systems around the state do not have that authority. So there's another barrier there to creating regional connectivity in many of the other systems around the state with the smaller rural systems. So we're urging that they look at regionalism by flipping it and look at the inputs that are coming into the county. That then means there's access to the services that the other metro provides. There are no changes anticipated at this time in state funding. And I know I've said funding several times here, but that really is kind of the elephant in the room on this issue. Yes, 2015, 2016 budget, the state put $75 million in the budget for capital projects, but no rural systems were eligible for those monies because there were 10-year or 20-year bonds, and the vehicles that the rural systems use do not have that shelf life. This past session, at the last minute, depending on passage of HB 930, the governor put $100 million in the transit budget, in the CERTA budget, to be spent on something that was unknown. Well, we now know that that money was reserved to provide BRT lanes along 400 North. We're thinking in conjunction with potential for Amazon and all of the other work that's going on within Metro, where they just received a $138 million federal DOT grant to do work in that same corridor. But there's a caveat that none of us knew about until this past week, and that money will not be spent on that corridor unless Fulton County passes an additional 0.2 cents in their local transit tax. So we've got to wait and see what happens with that. We've also heard there may be some money out there, sort of, kind of, possibly, but DOT's budget, 17-18 budget this year, they spent $1.7 million on transit for local governments. Most of it was for matching grants. We do not see from the board meeting that there's going to be a change in that. However, keep in mind, we've got an administration change coming. We will have a new governor. We will have a new lieutenant governor. And so that whole paradigm could actually change. It's up to the leadership at this particular point. Next steps on Transit Governance and Funding Commission. We and Athens Clark will be presenting arguments on the single county transit SPLOST at the October meeting. I have already written a draft of what needs to be done to 5 or 6 pages in HB 930 to change it from a 2-county option to a 1-county option. The House will conclude their work in December with recommendations and a legislative package. They're not focusing anything on the ATL other than to organize that part of the administration and the law, and to make sure that they've got everybody in place to go probably as early as December. There will be some administrative changes because the way the ATL is supposed to work is rather vague in the legislation. And there will be significant language to address the rural systems in the state. We just don't know what that is going to look at. But they will address organization, how they will be run, where they can go, where they can't go, and figure out some kind of issue for funding. But that funding will be addressed in terms of what are the locals doing with their money. I'm sorry?
When are they planning on doing
that? Will be in their recommendations will come in December and be ratified in January. And that will be embodied in a piece of legislation. State legislative leadership priorities for 2019, school safety, rural broadband for workforce development, and rural transit for access to jobs. And again, where is the money going to come from? We don't know. They haven't said. They're trying to figure it out. We're trying to get our piece of the pie as aggressively as we can. This is what we're looking at in terms of what we should be looking at for 2019. Obviously, amend HB 930 to eliminate the 2-county transit, pass the single county transit SPLOST language. We've got a coalition of all of the other metros building on this because they see value in this, which will give them access to a significant amount of money. 1 cent a year in local option sales taxes countywide, $60 million. So we're not talking about a little bit of money. this plays directly into the study work that will be done, which would give you then the capability to run the system countywide as opposed on some kind of artificial limitation. The other one, we're going to try to get this done just as an, oh, by the way, while you're doing this, HB 170 stripped out the exemption on excise tax from the purchases of diesel fuel. Costs us about $100,000, a little more than that extra a year. That exemption is not in there. We're going to try to get that back. The hotel motel industry is going to try to have the $5 hotel fee removed as well. So there will be some action surrounding HB 170. The attitude among the transportation community is that, come on DOT, you're getting $1.2, $1.5 billion a year now. You can only spend so much money cutting down trees and doing those kinds of things on the interstates. So let's look at tweaking this a little bit. Let's share some of the love. So that's where we stand. That's what I see moving forward. There's still a great deal of work done, but now pretty sure we've got the support of the chairman, the attention of the chairman, and all of the other metro systems around the state are now pushing in this same direction to get that language corrected. And with that, I will entertain any questions. And if you would like, I will send through Curtis a copy of the last report from the Deloitte study, which goes into more detail than you would ever want to see on rural, but it is quite enlightening of the situation that they are facing at this time. All right, no questions. Thank you very much.
No, we're not saying that yet. We're trying to get
No,
our.
no.
Oh, okay.
He's just got to get into that screen.
See, I was going to get off the hook.
Nice try, Mike.
Not close.
You got to move faster.
Do we have any speakers in queue? Any questions?
Is there any question?
I guess not.
So you're going to bring back, you said the next meeting, we're going to have something about the other metro?
Yes, yes.
More details on that.
We are on the agenda to present and to really push this thing home at the October meeting. So I think by the October board meeting, we will be able to tell you what our definite plan forward is going to be.
So that's not the next board.
Not the next board meeting. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, then let's move into some action items. So Curtis, the first one up is whole insurance.
As Seacrest stated in June, we're going to up for renewal for our whole insurance. It's up at this time, so requesting board approval for marine insurance program through Sterling Seacrest for protection, indemnity, liability, excess liability, the whole coverage. In the board packet, there's all the details listed it out, but it is up for renewal.
So I will open the discussion.
I'll make a motion. Motion second.
Got a motion for, so I'm asking for motions. So I got a motion from Michael. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Clinton. So any discussion on the whole renewal insurance policy?
It's not just hull, it's also P&I.
Right.
Excess.
I agree.
Okay, barring no discussion, can we have a motion to vote?
Second.
Bill and Clinton. All in favor? All opposed, all abstained.
Michael, was the motion for the hearing? Is that what we're voting for here?
I see
Well,
what
now
you're
we
saying
have
earlier.
to move on 1 second, for the action item itself.
We're voting to renew the P&I.
Yes.
Renew it at the new rate, the new premium.
And that's the screen we've got now.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Next action item is the electric bus purchase. Curtis.
Move
request board approval to purchase 6 fully electric buses off of the Virginia State contract. There was a study done, and the board passed a resolution to purchase low or no emission vehicles in lieu of diesel vehicles. We have money from our CERTA grant, and we're looking at purchasing 3 35-foot and 3 40-foot fully electric vehicles. And they said CERTA is 80% covering this cost, with 20% from our SPLOST or FTA discretionary. But this is I know this is a long time coming, but we're here and we're looking to actually purchase some vehicles now.
Okay, we need a motion to open discussion.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, and I see one speaker waiting. Bill.
Yes, just a couple of quick questions. In ordering these 6 buses, is this another one of those takes a year to get? And it's going to take about a year to get them through?
They have to be built, yes.
So is that about the right time frame?
What the latest build time on that, Steve, is?
18 to 24 months.
Yeah, more a year.
2 years. Year and a half, 2 years. And how does the new NOLO grant that we got apply to this?
For another additional vehicle.
So above and beyond the
chargers,
6?
yes.
So that will be in addition to what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
So we might see that next month, Bruce?
Well, we're not gonna put it to the board until we have the money, and the FTA can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to give us that money.
I'm really excited to be voting for electric buses on behalf of millennials across the world. This is very cool.
And old people breathe here too.
That's true.
Tell them again.
You keep stepping in.
I've got a lot of it to step in.
We're close to that hole underground. Watch out, get too deep for you at the bottom.
Okay, Chester.
Question. We did this before, didn't we?
I'm sorry?
Did we do this before about the electric buses?
We've never voted to purchase electric buses.
We just accepted that we had the grant money to do it?
Correct.
All right, now, where does the refueling stations and stuff come in?
The depot chargers will be at Cat Central.
Okay, so once the bus leaves Cap Central, it's got enough juice to run until it comes back?
Yes, so technology is rapidly changing in the electric bus industry. A few years ago, when we first started talking about electric buses, we were looking at having in a fast charging system so they can recharge en route. Those fast charging systems cost anywhere from $580,000 to $700,000, so almost the size of a bus.
So we don't need them.
So battery technology has improved so much that now they can run all day and do not need to do inline charging. They can wait till they get back to the yard.
My hope is that we make sure that we can do that, because I would hate for them to go out and then you got to drag them back in.
Absolutely.
They need recharging.
Absolutely.
So I'm just hoping that we look at closely at having them on routes and stations where we can. But that battery gets within 2 hours of running out, we can recharge it if it's still got to be on that route. So I'm not for just Cat Central being the only place. I think that somewhere we got to put some what ifs mechanism in place. Right? If they're on this route, and I'll give you an example. If we put them on the route that runs from downtown from here to the mall, right? The mall ought to get it within 5 hours. We ought to be able to boost it some more. You know what I mean?
Depending on route design.
Yeah.
Maybe west side.
Could be west side. I just use that as an example. I'm not saying, because it could be that the one, especially if you're talking about the one that runs from here out to Gulfstream, the airport, and so forth and so on. You know, so I think we need to look. I'm good. I'm done.
Okay, then we're up with Jay.
Not to delay or make this thing any longer. I'm glad we're going into energy efficient, energy renewable direction. I just want to put in a cause that we make sure, and I know nobody wants to hear, but we make sure that we're in line with whatever structure plan we talked about earlier in our transit redesign, that we don't do things without having that and recourse in the back of our mind. And so I appreciate the fact that we are looking at renewable energy and I guess the electric buses, and I think we need to keep moving forward as far as doing that stuff. Thank you.
Okay, if no further questions, and we need a motion to vote.
So move.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor, vote yes. Opposed, no,
Second.
or abstain?
Stuff the second.
Need the second.
Okay.
Okay, motion carries.
Right?
It's like that.
Last action item for the day, Curtis, is the TAM plan and policy.
So we want to request board to approve our TAM plan, our transit asset management plan. Last month there was a presentation of this plan in coordination with the requirements of the FTA to have this plan done by October. And we had subsequent additional meetings with board members who requested additional information. So we're at the point now where we're requesting board to actually approve this plan.
Need a motion to open discussion?
Motion to open discussion.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second, so bring up your speaker cue for any questions we're going to have. How do you do this so fast?
I think it's built into it.
I
Just be
will
ready.
be very quick. I just want to say how grateful I am that we've gone to electronics, considering that this was a 132-page agenda because of all the TAM documents. So we've saved a couple of trees just at this meeting alone.
But we can get them at the age of I-16.
Yeah, I'm about to say that.
Waiting out there for you. Get your truck and go get them.
Okay.
I'll keep this real quick, if I may. Thank you, Terry, for all your hard work on this and everybody else. It is quite a plan, and I think it should be, just stated again that we were one of the first in the country to actually do this and do a really good job on it. So, round of applause to staff. We don't really have to do
And did more than we were.
We did more, went above and beyond. It worked out real well. I'm done speaking.
Okay, Jay.
I just want to point out the fact that, I'm glad we got a TAM plan. I just want to make sure if this is passed, that we start working on it immediately and work through it on an aggressive and an everyday basis and not let it just sit as a piece of paper and document on the table or on the floor. So I just want to make sure
I agree, this is a living plan.
Correct.
I move to vote.
Okay,
Move
we
the adoption.
need a second?
Second.
All in favor of adopting the TAM plan and policy?
And catch up.
Signal yes. Opposed, no, or abstain?
We keep.
Motion carries.
We keep.
Get moving something from the hearing,
Yeah.
not from the.
That's what confuses me.
Okay, then Curtis, we're to the executive director's report.
The executive director report's in your board packet, or on your tablet, I should say. I'll entertain questions you may have.
Do we have any questions for Curtis?
Wait for it to come out of the vote.
No, that's
I
not.
did to yours.
We're not giving you, it's not giving you the executive director's report.
No.
I got it.
You got the arrow.
I got it.
Travel.
If I can.
There was, you need me to sign in to talk?
Yes.
Fine.
It
In the,
is actually first.
No, I'm
Sorry.
No, that was.
That was from last time.
in the fixed route KPI, we had a fairly significant jump in gross cost per revenue mile. And then the mean distance between vehicle failures is actually back up above 12,000. Seems like it was below briefly. I guess the question I got about those two items is, with all of the new vehicles we've got online now, shouldn't we be seeing improvements in these things?
Over time, you'll see it, yes, absolutely. I mean, keep in mind, this is July, so it's not an
We
aggregate.
didn't really have them in.
Right, and well, and also the number is the number, so once you get to December, those numbers are taking an average, so this is just the number for July.
But it's reasonable to start expecting.
Yes.
You know, much better numbers here.
Absolutely, we see it every day, the amount of breakdowns we have compared to what we used to.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Curtis? And let's move on to the unit updates. System delivery update. Curtis?
Hold tight before you go further. I'll click in if I need to. The complaint level went up from 2 to 15. Can we say something about that?
That's paratransit.
Okay. I mean, I just happened to see it.
Yeah, I saw the complaint level went up dramatically on paratransit, which I think we would expect. It also went down dramatically on fixed route,
I see that.
which was kind of a surprise.
Mike, do you want to give an update?
Yes. You want me to do service delivery update?
Sure.
Okay. The service delivery update is on your tablets, and I'm going to update you on paratransit, and then I'll entertain any questions you have. Since you brought up the complaints, yes, we did see a spike in complaints, which could be expected because we did have our issues. We had some troubles, as you were well aware of, in paratransit service delivery. But to update you on that, we've gotten to the point where we got a class of 10 who graduated and have been on the streets a couple of weeks now. Our contract services, CRC, I notified them a couple of weeks ago, and we're no longer using CRC. They thanked them for their help. They were a little bit inconsistent at times with operators showing up, which led to a little bit of the service delays that we experienced, but they did help. We're still using National Tour, and we plan to use them through mid-September when the current class of 11 will graduate and hit the streets. As far as the vehicles, we have 27 of our 28 vehicles are in. One of our vehicles is at the Chevy dealership for an engine issue that they're looking at. Rental vehicles of the, I think we had 14 or so altogether. We had Alliance vehicles, 5. We sent 2 of those vehicles back. We're going to hold on to 3 for training and to make sure we have enough vehicles for training because we don't want any delays there. Mobility Works, we've already started sending those vehicles back. By next week, we will have all of those vehicles sent back as well. We'll send them back in stages because we just want to make sure that we maintain the level of service we have been maintaining.
And all the rental vans are all returned.
Enterprise vans are,
We
returned those. Yeah, we returned those a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks now, maybe at least 3 weeks. Let's see. As far as complaints, I checked for this morning, and we had those 15 complaints last month, and in August, service-related, delay-related complaints were half that many. It was about 7, and so we make progress there as well. There's always going to be a certain amount of complaints, whether it's mechanical. We had one where the wrong address was listed in the system. That's going to cause delay complaints there, but for the most part, we've made great strides there. Any other questions? Fixed route vehicles, real quick, we have all the fixed route vehicles in. Our 35-footers are on property, and 2 trolleys as well. Other 2 trolleys will be in spring of 19. The other 2 trolleys? About March, yeah.
Okay, Jay, I think you're up.
All right. I commend you as far as the complaints, as far as the 100,000 passengers, as far as on the fixed route side, from reducing it from 9 to 3. We already just talked about the complaints with the paratransit side being from 2 to 15. But what I want to make sure we focus on with the paratransit side is any complaint that we got in July, June, August, it should not be the same complaint September, October, November, or it should be limited to what the scope of the complaint is, because we got to get out of the business of not fixing the problem. And I'm not saying that this is what we're doing. I'm not saying that this is what we have done. But when I see a complaint on something in the past and then it keeps showing up every single month, then and we're not addressing it, we're not trying to fix it, then that becomes problematic. Just like Commissioner Ellis, me and Commissioner Ellis have a relationship with Dr. Williams. I go in there to get, to take my father in there to get his feet looked at, and she come immediately at me telling me about the issues going on with paratransit. So my first guesstimate, because I know Commissioner Ellis has brought it up, are we going out there and talking to these places to see if we're build a rapport, build a relationship with these people, so therefore we can eliminate some of these kind of conversations? And that's
And I can answer that. I have gone out. I have not gone out to Dr. Williams yet. I've gone out to a couple of dialysis centers and made contact, but that's absolutely on the table. And that's very ideal. That's part of the plan.
And then I don't want us to lose focus so much on paratransit that we lose focus on all the other operation stuff too. So I do want to make sure I say that platform from here, because once paratransit gets back in line, then all the other stuff is going to become a focal point of us. But I understand you need the time to get paratransit back in line, because that's the main priority. As a board member, that's the one everybody's attacking on. So, but I do want, when we get focused and realigned, that we also focus on the other operations of the organization. And I do appreciate you.
And I do that every day.
Thank you, sir.
Bill.
Yeah, Mike, the ridership on paratransit was down almost 9%. Was that just a function of the problems we were having primarily?
Yes. What we saw is that some of our loyal passengers, they stopped using the system because they didn't think it was reliable and because of the issues we had. And I know some of the board members can attest to that, because they were in touch with their constituents and they got that information. But we've noticed in August that it's usually our busiest month, and the ridership seems to be rebounding so far.
We're back up over 400 trips.
So over 400 trips a day, weekday. We put a message out. I think I mentioned this at the last board meeting, letting our customers know, a robocall, that the changes we've made, the status of our changes, ask them to come on back to the service, because we've made changes. We've got new vehicles. We hired people. We have contract services to come back and give us a shot.
Any sense of the response you're getting on that? Are you hearing from people about that?
Well, judging by the ridership, I think it's positive.
In the Square Box letter that they sent, updating the federal legislative stuff, one of the things that they brought up was the lifts for the vehicles, the lift problem we were having. But I thought that was resolved because the vehicles we were getting didn't apply. Was that letter just before the problem was resolved? Because they seemed to indicate that there were still some issues with the lifts.
Do we have any information on the lift?
Yeah, I did hear that. It was not followed from that letter, and it was before.
Okay.
So the information in that letter was before we found that we didn't fall into that. Okay. And then the other thing you just mentioned, the new trolleys. The 2 new trolleys then will go on the downtown route, several routes, so that at least most of the time we'll just have 4 trolleys servicing those 2 routes now instead of other buses.
Yes, sir.
One thing I'm hearing about is whenever we're using a bus instead of a trolley, people hear it. They're hearing the noise of the bus in some residential areas. Plus, the trolley just looks so much better.
It does.
Thank you.
Okay, Chester, we have to reset you. You're next. Actually, you're not speaking, as you probably realized.
You ready for me now?
Yes.
I need to address, since we're talking about service. Yesterday, Ms. Grant texted me and then she called me because she had to leave Tremont Park to come down here to get her sister. They had an appointment, and the Westlake bus was sitting out here. It wasn't moving. And so, Curtis, I sent you an email, a text message, email, whatever it was.
You sent me an email and I responded to your email.
What do you mean a lot of drivers took off? What are we talking about?
Called off.
What do you mean a lot of drivers called off?
If I can address that.
Yeah, what is that?
Commissioner Ellis. We had, in addition to the known time off, vacations, we had 7 people on vacation, a couple of approved absences. We had 8 sick calls for the day, and on top of that, we had a couple other, about 4 workers' comps, and I think 2 other long-term absences. So what the dispatch did is he exhausted all options to make sure we made service. There was a little shortfall, and at that hour of that Westlake was that shortfall between 1 and 2 o'clock. That's going to happen any given day in a transit operation based on your manpower. You know, who comes to work, who decides to stay home. We had our extra board out there. We called in, I believe it was 15 operators on their day off operators to help cover service. So that's why we had that bus sitting here.
Now, you mean to tell me you want me to sit here and accept that you're going to shut a bus down? People who need to get to Westlake going to wait an hour because we don't have enough people to work? And you saying that's going to happen in transit? I'll be dog.
Happens all the time.
It does.
Well,
You
listen,
staff?
if it happened all the time, those people who are arranging that stuff need to go. I don't. No,
Can
you
I
can't.
explain?
No, you can't explain that to me. You
Why can't
cannot
I explain
explain to me how we have a bus that's supposed to be on a regular route, and it's gonna get down here, and you're gonna shut it down, and folks can't get where they're supposed to get. Those folks called me because they had an appointment that they had to make in Millard, Georgia. The sister was riding the bus on the Westlake so that she could meet her sister at the house so they could cut down on the time. If that was the case, she could have gone and got her sister from her house and then gone out. But what they did was, you all shut down a bus. These folks expecting to be, and listen, when we say service, we got a bus running that's supposed to be at a particular place at a particular time. Am I correct with this board? When we got a route, isn't that bus supposed to be there on time? We shut that bus down. She had to leave Tremont Park, come down here, get her sister, call me on her way out. And I said, what you mean the bus? She said that when I got down there, my sister was furious because the bus was just sitting there with the blinkers blinking. And then that made them late to where they needed to be. And when folks talking about going out of town to funerals, and you make them late because we shut down a bus, see, what that says to me, there's some deeper issues here. I don't know how the other board members see it, but there's some deeper issues here when all of a sudden a group of operators call in sick, take off. You're supposed to have the schedule set up so that it takes in who's vacationing and how their job is covered.
We do.
And for you to want me to accept that that's normal in transportation, I be dog. That cat ain't gonna hunt, and that dog ain't gonna fry. Now that's total unacceptable. Now, I don't know how many other board members know that happened, but that's totally unacceptable. For us not to have people, a bus sitting down here, running with the blinkers going, and not transporting the passengers, and we paying for it. Y'all don't get the calls. We get the call. Ms. Grant called me because I'm her pastor. She said, I'm going to report this to you because I know you on the cab board. Now, that's not acceptable. Under no circumstances is that acceptable. And I don't care how furious you get with me. That's not acceptable. And there's going to be something done about it. You can guarantee that. Write that in your book and see if that's legislative.
Okay. We hear what you say, and I can't disagree with it, but it's time to move on.
Move any way you want it, but there's going to be something done about it.
Okay, next up, I think, is...
Can you just go over that Mrs. Bowie case and how it was resolved?
Oh, yeah, so Mrs. Bowie, she's a paratransit customer, and she had a pickup at 4 p.m. Last week, and the vehicle that had a mechanical issue that was going to pick her up. She was moved to another manifest. Unfortunately, that vehicle on the way picking her up had a mechanical issue as well. She was moved back to her original manifest, but by that time the dispatcher had already filled the gap in that manifest, and that paratransit operator was already up in Pooler. So by the time we got to Miss Bowie, it was almost 2 hours aside from her pickup time. We had extra board that was already out on the road helping folks out, because we have an extra board now, extra operators that's gonna have a run that go for these delays when we pick up folks when we have delays, but they were also out at the time. So it was just one of those situations with Ms. Bowie where she was right. We were late. The dispatcher, we had a little internal communication issue as far as the dispatcher letting us know, but once she explained what happened, really she did everything she possibly could. It was just one of those things where when you get two mechanical issues on back-to-back buses, when you're making changes, trying to get, you're piecing stuff together, falls apart on you. So that's what happened with Ms. Bowie. I went out and talked to her, made contact with her. I actually sat down and talked with her for about a half hour out of her place. We gave her some tickets for her trouble. She shared some other issues, weekend scheduling, which we took back and shared. But it was just one of those issues where, it was beyond our control because of the mechanical issues.
What about the oversized wheelchair issue?
She was listed, initially she was listed as that she needed an oversized wheelchair, but somewhere along the line I guess she dropped some weight and then she was on a walker. Since she had taken the service using the walker, then we took the oversized wheelchair designation off of her record. Well, she's in a wheelchair again, so when we went to pick her up, she needed the oversized wheelchair, so we had to update her record to indicate that she needs an oversized wheelchair. So that was just one of those things where we weren't updated on her status, and that affected her delay as well. Thank you.
And we only have certain ones that can pick up her wheelchair.
Right.
Okay, I think Jay?
Only a quick point of information. Did we get a full annual report for 2018? A breakdown of all this stuff schematic together to show how 2018 was. But I know this is the new fiscal year for 2019.
In your last month's report, it had through June.
Okay, so is it a full scope of the totality of all the months for the previous year? Okay. The other thing is, as far as 1842 and 1835, I sent emails in reference to those bus pictures.
Yeah, I can speak on that. So, just going to get the numbers right here. The bus that was sideswiped didn't have, and it was cosmetic damage. Because the reference was, why was that bus out on the road? And basically, the one that was rear-ended, that one was not put back on the road because it had some issues with the coolant, and it could not be put back on the road until it was looked at. The other bus was sideswiped again. It was cosmetic damage. It did not affect the operation of the bus. The reason the bus was put out on the road, we were having APCs, automatic passenger counters, installed in 4 of our buses. We had 2 on hold for cleaning and another 2 for service. So being that it was a cosmetic damage, it doesn't look good, and people don't like to see a brand new bus with damage like that, but the fact is we needed it to make service that particular day. We've had 2 companies come in, give us quotes, which we have to go through the process and get quotes what it's going to cost for repair. That's being done this week. Those vehicles will be repaired and put back into service. But that's why the one picture you sent, the vehicle was in the lot, so that was not on the road. That was the same day the accident happened. Okay. The other one was in service though.
I mean, I just respond because I don't want nobody saying I'm out here talking to employees or anything like that. I'm trying to follow the code of conduct.
Okay.
That our lawyer had put together for us. So I'm just making sure I follow it. So when stuff comes to me, I immediately forward it off. So with that being said, I do have the number, and I'll make sure this is mentioned at this board. So, and it's not to say that no employee, I don't trust that they don't do their job. It's the fact that I don't want to see those buses with the same damage in January, because it destroys our brand. If we have buses that are damaged, we need to make sure that they're as fast as possible. And I understand your APCs and all the ABCs and all that stuff is good, but I don't want to see it when we have buses like that riding around destroyed, because it destroys our brand. And I want to protect our brand.
Understood. And the APCs being installed had nothing to do with the buses as far as the delay.
I got you.
It has to go through the process.
All right. So if I get future things like this, do I need to email to you or email it to to the CEO or who I need to email to?
Either way.
Because there was a delay on it, and I didn't get my response until after the chairman had mentioned it, and then I got my response. And it shouldn't be that way because I made sure I put it out there for everybody to respond. So, and this is not a question for you. This is for the chairman and for the
I never
CEO.
got the email until he forwarded it to me.
So I just want to make sure. So do I need to include you in the email then?
That would be nice.
Done. I'm done.
Bill?
Yeah, I just want to go back to this missed route for a second. You said there were 8 drivers that called in no-show. That was on top of scheduled vacations and time off and everything. So
They
that
were
was-
sick. They were no shows. They were sick. They called in sick.
Right, okay, so that was 8 people that you were anticipating showing up for work that did not.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
How relative is that to a normal day of people calling in sick?
That's a little high.
Well, what's a little mean?
We probably average about 4 or 5 a day. And on this particular day, not only do we have those 8, we also had we had relieved union officials for a meeting, a scheduled meeting that we had to have as well. So it all kind of happened all at once, you know, with the 8 call off, the union release, the known time off we had already.
Is there something we can do?
We have standby drivers. We use an average of standby drivers to the average amount of call-offs in the course of a year.
That's
If we have more standby drivers, it costs money, and they're not providing service. So our budget sustains what we call operator efficiency ratio. So we have a ratio that we use to provide how many extra boards for contingency.
To use a seriously overused cliche already, this was a kind of perfect storm, because if you hadn't had that union meeting scheduled, you'd have had sufficient relief drivers.
Yes.
And that can't be rescheduled or something in a case like that to make sure that we're providing service?
Well, at the time it was scheduled, a couple of those other sick calls came in after. So, you know, the days are evolving.
They were already relieved.
Yeah, they were already relieved before the whole day kind of took shape the morning, and we knew.
I'm assuming you can't go drive the bus.
I have a CDL, but no, I will not drive the bus.
That was mostly kidding.
I know.
Duly noted.
Chester, let's,
I'm all jokes, man. I'm sorry. You can have my shirt though.
Chester, let's wrap this up and move on to,
I want to go back to what Mike said about changing the status from. When you change the status, do you get information from the person's doctor? Like she was in what, an oversized wheelchair?
Yes.
You moved her to a walker?
Yes.
Was that because she got on the bus one time with the walker, or why was she moved?
can we be talking about this
I
with,
I do not think we should be discussing people's medical condition
Nah,
in a
that's
public
all.
meeting. I think
Okay, well, I
you're
mean-
bordering on HIPAA violation, and you also.
Listen, I'm gonna get you tied, because if that's the case, you should have said when Mike was talking.
Well,
See, you selective, and I don't like that. That's the second time, then don't you do that again.
I'll do it whenever I think it's necessary.
And then I'm gonna shut you down every time I won't.
Well, you can't shut me down.
Okay, you want to bet on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Take that to the bank and we'll go to Vegas. Now,
okay, I think we're.
we need to take that to executive session?
It's not on the agenda for the executive session.
But we need to know.
We can put it on.
We need to know when Cat changes the status, is that because of a doctor's report or because that's Cat doing it on his own? That's my question.
I think his concern is we mentioned the person's name.
Well, I didn't
So
do that.
I don't think, I think that.
I didn't do that.
No, but now we know who this person is, and I think that's
Okay.
what we're concerned about.
I didn't do that.
You didn't do that.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's why I brought it up, because
Do
the
it when it
name
happens.
was dropped out. Okay, so let's move on to another subject. The day's getting long here. System development update, Curtis.
Your system development is in the packet, and Patricia's here to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, we do have a report in the packet. Most of the activities that occurred in our department for the month of July centered around Jared Walker, getting them here, working on the last minute changes to the contract for the meeting, the presentation that they did this morning. And then later this afternoon at 2:15, we are scheduled to have a staff kickoff meeting with Jared Walker, basically going over much of the information that they shared with you all. Currently, they're out touring the county. So we did focus on Jared Walker, but a couple of other items that we did manage to work on. Of course, as mentioned earlier, we had a system change in July, and so we were able to promote those service changes, you know, the expansion of the dock service, as well as minor adjustments to the number 6 crosstown. The planning staff worked with SSU on coordinating the new service agreement for this current academic year, so that's going well with the students returning. And then we managed to also send out about 4 media advisories and news releases during the month. Several of those made it into our trade publications, you know, like the press release on the new buses that hit the streets, so that did make it into some of those trade publications. And then something that's new in our report that I hope you'll take time to review is Sarah in our department put together a web analytic report. And so there is a lot of detailed information about who's visiting our website, and we'll continue to kind of include that report into our section report from time to time. But I'd like to note that for the month of July, we experienced a 6% increase in web users over the previous July. So we have more people that are visiting the service, are visiting our website, trying to learn more about our services. So that's just a few of the highlights, but please take time to look at our report, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thanks.
Oh, okay, Tabitha.
Hi, have we gotten the system report on the call center yet, or is it not complete?
System report on the call center.
Yeah, we paid to set up the new call center. It's set up?
We've always had a call center.
No, but, okay, y'all, please don't.
Oh, paratransit?
Maybe
paratransit?
Yes, the call center, with the paratransit, the new software, we're gonna do a whole restructuring thing. Did we do that? We did that, yes?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we have a new personnel in the call center. We have
Right. Did we get like a project closure report on what was upgraded, how we changed the software? Did we get that? Are we gonna get that?
We certainly can.
Well, we're not done.
Oh, we're not done.
We gave a status, Mike gave a status report a couple of months ago. We can get another status report next month, but we're not done.
Okay, so when will implementation be complete?
Yeah, I got one.
We've already implemented, I'm thinking you're talking about the consultant report and the changes in the call center and paratransit.
Right, we were upgrading software. We were changing software. We were gonna do new protocols. We're gonna have policies and procedures in place, scripts written for reps to use, you know.
You can give an update and have all this information next month, because we are still ongoing, but we can certainly give you a status update and a projected timeline of conclusion.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, Jay?
Two things I would like to see, and even when I was going back to Mike's report, I like to see where it's aggregated amongst a 12-month time period, so I can see where the growth and development is at. And doing it on a month-to-month basis, that means I got to go home, do it on a spreadsheet, and put the number in. So can we make sure that when we do these reports, like the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so I can see where it's an aggregated growth, where we're actually growing, and I'm not just getting an estimated growth point of saying that we're growing in Facebook likes and estimated.
Yeah, yes, I did talk with Shalonda 2 months ago when we were talking about trying to add within the last 2 months, you know, so that we can give percentage increases. And you'll notice in some of the reports, we basically say there's been a 17% increase versus the previous month. But we'll be happy to periodically present those reports to you. I think it would just, you know, it would lengthen, you know, the information if we did it every single month. But would on a quarterly basis, perhaps including those reports so that you can see for 12 months, would that be helpful?
But you should be able to do just a running chart showing that increase at the end of each month. If you got your analytics set up correctly.
Use that table.
Yeah.
Yeah, you add a table, and then the percentage shows in a graph form, and then you can outline what's done, what increased, and the percentage of increase.
Is that doable? Yes.
Thank you,
We can do
Tabitha,
that.
I appreciate that.
Well, that's my area, I know that.
I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's right.
Commissioner O'Dell, I appreciate
Thank you. Great
All right.
suggestions, but
Now,
yes.
can I get back on the clock now?
No.
As far as outreach and communication is concerned, we're past that phase now. I need to see more, just like I told the young lady earlier, I need more engagement from CAT. We have an officer in place, we have a strategy in place, I need more engagement from CAT. And I'm looking at the media coverage, media
And we'll have.
advertising, the news release, but I need.
Well, you have a list there of outreach activities that our outreach manager participated in. And then she was in the meeting this morning with our subcontractor on Jarrett Walker. So they will be working hand in hand going forward with this Jarrett Walker initiative, because we want to make sure that we do get into those neighborhoods that, since I've been here, I've heard you all mention, that we need to tap into the neighborhood association meetings. And Valerie is doing that. She's made a commitment to get on the agendas of several neighborhood associations, and she's been doing that for the past 2 or 3 months. And we'll be doing more of it as we work with our contractor with Jarrett Walker.
All right, are we going into all neighborhood associations? I want to make sure we're impactful in all neighborhood association meetings, not just the one that is our current service area,
No,
but
well,
the ones outside of the service area too.
Perhaps
because
we can put
expansion is
together a report for you in one of the committees and share with you what we're doing regarding outreach. Would that be helpful?
That would be very helpful.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure we're taglining and we're meeting as many people as possible.
Absolutely.
Where they're at and not forcing them to come to us.
Absolutely, and we talked about that this morning with Jarrett Walker, and she stressed it too in her report. We have to go to the people. We can't just expect to schedule a meeting and expect people to come.
I got 10 seconds coming back. I'm keeping down that clock. My thing with that is, I want to make sure that we're going into, there are certain communities, like for instance the paratransit. Those people in paratransit, they always tagline, and they do it on in his post as well. They always say that y'all have the meetings downtown or in this area and we can't get to. So I'm trying to make sure I stress the fact that we got to meet them. And I don't want it where we're talking about meeting them between 10 and 6, because sometimes meeting them is after 6 o'clock. And I'm just giving you the express interest they give me as a commissioner, the express interest they give me as a CAT board member, that we have to meet them at their location. And so I appreciate this listing of the media coverage, because it lets me know what you actually did. And if we can continue to do that, but we can expand it where we're actually making sure we get in those neighborhood associations and stuff like that we just discussed. So I just want to make sure it comes off my mouth. I'm done. You can take my time.
Okay, Tabitha, I think you're back.
I'm back, yes. And talking about news reports and whatnot, there was something on the news about CAT working with the school board. I don't see that in here.
That's because we haven't. They mentioned in the news they're working with us or reached out to us, and I haven't heard one word.
Okay.
Okay, so there was no meeting?
No, it wasn't. No meeting at all.
No, yeah,
We haven't heard
we were
anything from
surprised
them.
too when we heard that on the radio.
So all those different articles that you sent us are included in this listing right here?
The different articles I sent?
I guess the articles you share with us from Savannah Morning News, are they included in this listing?
I don't know if
We try to be as comprehensive as possible, yes. We have a media monitoring system, and Sarah and Shalonda are keeping a really good eye on what's showing up. And so we're trying to include them in our board report so that you all can see what kind of coverage we're receiving.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then let's Curtis cover financial updates, and I think we need to break for lunch before we go into executive
All right,
session.
Terry, you want to give an update, please?
I can. So the financial reports for the first month of our new fiscal year, FY19, are included in your package. We're showing a $47,000 pickup revenues over expenditure for the month, and it's running right at $100,000 better than budget. we are watching fuel. It's increasing more than we had anticipated. The forecasters plus the CPI indicated that it would increase 1% this next year, and it's creeping up a little bit. So we're seeing.
You probably should allocate more than that.
Right. So we're seeing a negative variance with all three modes of fuel, and we'll have to monitor that because that's quite a large expenditure we have. It can increase up to 8 to 10% of our total annual costs. So I'll also answer any other questions anybody may have.
Just a quick one without signing in. The paratransit mobility cost is up, obviously.
Yes.
Are the national people in there yet?
Yes. We're
So
accruing
July included the
2 weeks worth of the national tour plus the rentals plus CRC estimates. So it's fully included in the July numbers.
Tabitha.
How will a recession impact us?
It depends. Of course, the financial impact is different than the ridership impact. And service delivery experts, Curtis or Mike, would have to speak.
Yeah, ridership
Service
increases
delivery.
during a recession.
Okay, so are we going to have some type of contingency plan if we roll into one in 2020?
Well, we started
Because
putting
the
money
gas-
aside for our contingency fund. For the first time ever, we're able to put $835,000 away for that. And we have to continue building upon that, absolutely.
So we should build upon the gas.
We're budgeting for a $250,000 increase in our operating contingency this fiscal year, which will put it right at $1,080,000. If our plan comes to fruition through the year, we should end the year with $1 million in an operating contingency this year.
Okay, so if ridership increases during a recession and we roll into one in 2020, how will we gauge whether or not we need to have more buses before that happens? Does ridership increase at the beginning of the recession or right in the middle of the recession? When does it? Is there some type of scale?
We're always watching the monthly trends. So through the budget process, which will happen in January or February of next year, we will look at this year's ridership issues. We'll look at a rolling 12. We'll look at the forecast, and we'll incorporate those into next year's budget process.
Okay.
So the main driver of our cost is service levels.
Right.
And we don't plan on putting service levels on the street if we don't have the ridership, and vice versa. If ridership's going up, then we'll have more service on the street and we'll have more service hours.
Because it takes us a year to get a bus, right?
Talking about adding buses to the fleet?
Yeah.
Yeah, about a year and a half.
A year to construct a fixed route bus. Just
Our buses are not filled, so I assume you have extra capacity.
Right now, sure, absolutely.
So we do have some growth we could do in a recession.
About what, 20%?
Not that, I don't think that.
we do have a 20% allowed fleet contingency. So we're allowed additional buses over what peak pullout is by the FTA, and we do have those in our full
Can't have
fleet
more
size.
than that.
Right.
So right now, we can increase up to 20%.
We have that many.
Yeah, we have the 20, but we can't go higher than that or we're gonna find.
So, okay.
Are you done?
Mm-hmm.
Chester?
The recession's gonna be your fault for bringing it up.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's not my fault.
said it
It's
out loud,
2020.
no.
You may as well get ready for it.
You in trouble. We'll see you after
It
school.
won't happen.
Whatever.
You gonna be after school.
We'll go to war.
That's when the tax breaks change and
You
everything.
can put that on me.
Don't bring that stuff.
Okay.
I see you have in this report I'm reading, you've got all of the insurances and the fuels and other things. What I don't see is what other contracts are we paying?
So you're looking at a list of all checks cut that were over $2,500. So any contract that we're paying monthly will be included in that list. Every time we cut a check and it's more than $2,500, it's on your monthly rate.
So how many are we cutting under 25?
I don't have the exact number, but I can run some data for you and let you know.
And will you be sending that to us, so that we'll know, we get a better idea
see what you're saying. 'Cause how
Sure,
much
I mean, I can tell you in any given month how many checks we cut, how many were over 2,500, and how many were under.
How much are we spending on that? I mean, I just need to know how
Our
much we're spending
operating
on that.
costs vary between 1.4 and 1.6. About 850,000 of that is payroll, so the other 800,000 in operating costs is to fuel, materials and supplies and service vendors.
Okay, yeah, well, let's say I'm not interested in that part, that's salaries. I'm not, whatever percentage you paying in salaries, that's fine.
Mhm.
But now those vendors and things we're paying is what I'm interested in. Those we are paying for who's supplying us with service, all right?
Right, very few
Those are
monthly
numbers.
vendors will have a bill that's under $2,500, but I can surely run you a checklist of every check we cut in any given month. If I can incorporate that into the report, it will add 3 to 6 pages.
To me, if I can just quick, to
Yeah,
me,
you
it's
can.
not to actually see the numbers, but to see an amount of what we're spending under that 25 per month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Because if it's
in addition to this, put a statement in there that says, in
this is
addition
how
to
much
these.
money- and then if I need to ask any contingency questions, then I'll ask.
Yep, I can do that.
And I'm not taking from Chester.
Or,
Chester
I
might
mean,
want
I
it
can
where he
add
wants
a
it for
list. I
report,
mean,
but I just want to see if we're spending $10,000 under that amount or 100,000. If it's 100,000, then I'm gonna ask for that report.
Right, and I think that the request would go through the board, through the chair, and we can modify the financial reporting and the update any way you want to.
And on average, between 1,000 to 2,500 on average per month, how many expenditures are there?
Right, I can check it. I think you're seeing the majority, but I'll surely check it for you. I don't know the number.
But I do see what Chester's trying to get to. I apologize for speaking.
You took up the rest of my time, that's fine.
That's,
I mean,
Any other
we
questions
can do
for
it any
Terry?
way the board wants, and so the.
Well, Terry, why don't you show us what it is, and then
Okay.
we'll see if we want to continue.
And
on
that-
it. It may be something that if we see it once, we're not.
But I don't want to see it for 1 month, Shadow, because July numbers might be different from
Yeah,
January.
but we'll get an idea whether or
Yes,
not
sir.
it's.
Okay.
Okay, then I
Thank
think
you,
we
Terry. So
should
moved.
break for lunch.
So moved.
I'll need a second.
Second.
First, I think it's lunch.
Be mad.
We need a motion for lunch.
How you doing, man?
Recess.
All right.
Yeah.
Recess.
Take a break. No, keep. Shut it down. I don't wanna talk about it. Shut it down.